Honorable members, good morning.
Recording in progress.
You are welcome, honorable members, from the recess. Welcome back, and I hope you were able to use the recess to work with our constituencies, to work with the communities, and to do some work for our families and our different political organizations that have brought us to where we are here in Parliament. I also hope that some moments were used by honorable members to just rest a bit, because it's a long way to go. Next year is the local government elections. Last year, we were in elections. And immediately after next year, we'll be left with about 14 months before the commencement of another campaign for the 2029 elections. I just hope that in future, there can be a consideration in this country to streamline our elections, because it basically means we are forever campaigning. We are a forever campaigning nation, because there isn't too much break between the elections. And when you conclude another round of elections, you have to start waiting for the next elections. I welcome the staff from the Portfolio Committee on International Relations. We also welcome the media that might be following the proceedings of the Portfolio Committee on International Relations using different platforms which are provided by Parliament to ensure that indeed our democracy lives up to the expectations and the dictates of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. I see some of the staff from the DERCO department are here, so we are also welcoming you from DERCO. Today we are going to be having a presentation from the Planning Commission in as far as us as South Africa having to play a role in multinational forums is concerned. But before we do that, let's just deal with the agenda, honorable members. Agenda is presented for adoption. It's opening and welcome apologies, consideration and adoption of the agenda, presentation by the Planning Commission, and then closure. Do we have a mover for adoption of the agenda?
I move, Mr. Chair, for the adoption of the agenda. Honorable Wesley Douglas.
Honorable Douglas, thank you
Good
very much.
morning, everybody. Honorable Chair, I will second. Thank you. It's Advocate Saleh.
Advocate Shamimo, thank you very much for seconding the agenda. Our agenda is now adopted. Lubabalo, apologies.
Good morning, Chair and honorable members. We have one apology, Chair, from the Portfolio Committee. It's Honorable Mishwe. He's attending another meeting. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. That's the only apology that we have. Honorable members, I won't waste time. We know that in terms of South Africa's arrangement, we have a commission which works basically under the auspices of the presidency to do various things which must make sure that we deepen our democracy, and that as South Africa we are able to work with other nation states to pursue our agenda. We also know, honorable members, that our responsibility basically in whatever we do, we need to prioritize national interests in whatever we do. And whatever we do with other nation states, we do it in the context of us having to make sure that our national interests are prioritized, because we are a consequence, we are a creature of the people of South Africa, both as the three arms of the state. And because we are a consequence of the people of South Africa, whatever we do needs to be in the best interest of the people of South Africa. So without wasting time, I'm going to give over. I'm not sure who's going to be doing the presentation. Lubabalo, Austinel, if you can usher in our presenters from the Commission.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, honorable members. Today, Chairperson, the National Planning Commission has sent Professor Zondi to make the presentation that the committee has requested, Chairperson. And Professor Zondi is in the meeting, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairman.
Oh, Professor Zondi, thank you very much. You are welcome. I didn't look at the list of attendees. So you are welcome, Professor Zondi. We are quite familiar with you, Professor Zondi. You are an integral part of both DERCO and the committee. So you are part of the institution. So part of the evolution of the future history of our institutional memory includes you, Professor Zondi. So you are welcome, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and good morning to the members of the Portfolio Committee. It's a great honor again to be here. It feels like home for me. This committee has received us with warm hands, both in my capacity as the Professor of International Relations at University of Johannesburg, and also now in the National Planning Commission. It's a great honor. Let me just say before we begin that this is a great opportunity for us to test what the study that was conducted has found, that the study findings have been tested in various other conversations with other stakeholders, but we feel it is absolutely critical for us to hear from people's representatives from their vantage point about what is being found here, both about what we think is the problem and also about what we think might be solutions. We're very, very keen to hear very frank, very robust, critical responses to what is being placed on the table. There has not been any study of its nature. So this nature, the study is not a detailed, comprehensive study, but it's more a scoping study to begin our focus in this particular area. And this study might lay a basis, therefore, for something bigger that should come out of this. I am not alone. I'm joined by the members of the commission who are here, and also members of the secretariat at DPME who support us in the work that we do, and I want to appreciate them for being there. Again, thank you very much, honorable members, for giving us attention. I will begin. We begin with a context. For a while, South Africa has been talking about punching above its weight, and there's ample evidence to show this. South Africa has been, one critical evidence of this is that South Africa has been able to get into spaces its size does not justify. South Africa is a member of BRICS, but it's the smallest member of BRICS. It's much, much smaller than the smaller other member of BRICS, leading to some wondering whether we should be there at all. South Africa has been privileged to take up very critical positions at the United Nations, to chair some important initiatives. And South Africa has also had the privilege of hosting major forums in the world, shepherding global consensus. South Africa has played a huge role in, for example, the climate change negotiations, trusted to help bring about some form of consensus of a matter that is of shared concern everywhere else. And South Africa has therefore been earning a lot of diplomatic capital for itself, a lot of significance for itself. South Africa has found itself in major economic alliances in the world, both those with like-minded countries and those with a diversity of countries in there. South Africa has been privileged to have key leadership roles in key areas. If you look at chairing the African Union twice, chairing SADC three times, but chairing the SADC organ many more times. It has hosted two very successful and very eventful BRICS summit. The 2014 one led to the establishment of the BRICS Development Bank because it was part of South Africa's suggestion. And the second one in 2018 led to discussions related to alternative currencies and payment in local currencies. South Africa hosted and it chaired one of the most important non-aligned movement summit that led to the process of reform of this huge body of over 130 members in order to make it fit for purpose for the current world. And it has continued to play a crucial role there, respected in the non-aligned movement. South Africa hosted, of course, the mother of all global conferences, the World Conference Against Racism, and produced out of it what is now global consensus about measures to deal with racism and other forms of intolerances. South Africa was a founding member of IPSA and has hosted it at senior level more than twice. And South Africa is a key member of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, actually a founding member of this, considered the part of the leading pair in that, which includes India, Australia. It is India, Australia, South Africa, and Indonesia. South Africa is considered a key member of that, and we can name it. Another part of the context is that this year South Africa is hosting the G20 summit. It is a gathering of the 21 biggest economies in the world. It constitutes close to 3/4 of the world GDP. It is a premier decision-making body on global economic governance. It is responsible for managing global economic recovery, global economic reforms, and global economic cooperation. It is a huge honor to chair a body of this nature, not only because of its size, but because of the significance of its power to decide. And therefore, South Africa has the honor to shepherd the decisions that must be taken out of this body, be it on the reform of the international financial architecture or the new decisions that must be made in relation to accelerating the implementation of the SDG, be it the new innovative financing for climate change, adaptation and mitigation, be it the decisions expected to be made in relation to trade and development, especially rejuvenating global multilateral trade and rejuvenating the World Trade Organization after a period of a bit of a lull. South Africa is expected to shepherd decisions related to new regimes, new rules, new mechanisms and patterns for managing the acceleration of digital transformations in the world, and to make sure that these are inclusive and they are fair and they are just, and that Africa does not get left behind as a result of or through this global digital transformation. South Africa is also expected to help this year get the G20 out of a logjam in related to the external debt relief program. And as you know, a number of countries, including countries of the African continent, but also other countries, including emerging countries, are caught in what we call an external debt trap. Monies are being spent, huge amounts of money are being spent servicing the debt, monies that could be used to expand industrial production, expand entrepreneurial innovation, expand technological innovation, access to water, access to health, and education. So the debt is taking away from development. So debt and development is going to be a big one in Africa. It hopes for a major breakthrough here because it's a major drain on Africa's future. So as you say, in South Africa, we're hoping to see major breakthroughs, and therefore South Africa has a huge responsibility to do this. And as South Africa is expected to ensure a strong onboarding of the African Union as the newest member of the G20, by virtue of the decision the G20 took 2 years ago in India to admit the African Union as the only second non-country member of the G20, the first being the EU. Now, the African Union membership of the G20 is not a achievement, but it's an opportunity for an achievement. It is a means to an end, it's not an end. And this hangs on how well South Africa coordinates with the newly elected AU Commission to make sure that the continent is not just at a table, but that it is an effective member of the table and its voice is significant. It can attract investment and trade. It can attract advantage to the African continent. So South Africa's success is also linked to success of the African continent. Now, the issue is we know about the significance of all these opportunities. And we know that South Africa has been successful in attaining them. And that South Africa has been very clever in getting itself in the right pole positions in relation to global governance. But we also know that this is a costly exercise. We do not know fully, and I haven't seen our government's figures on this. We do not know that the cost of hosting the G20, but we know it's a significant cost. We know, for example, from previous ones, and if you look at India, it is estimated that India required about 1.4 billion to host the G20. It is estimated that Brazil brought the cost down because they were very nimble in doing this to between 500 and 700 million rand. So it's a costly exercise. It's a huge one because it's significant. We know how India managed the cost-benefit balance, because we know how the Indian companies that played a leading role, or including in financing the G20, how they actually finally benefited in terms of trade deals and investment deals, in terms of intellectual property, in terms of getting themselves into markets they have not been to before. We know how they did it. We know Indonesia, how they expanded their maritime economy, and they took advantage of their hosting the G20 some 4 years ago. We know how Brazil sought to boost its tourism, to boost in various parts of the economy, and how to place itself at the center of the global financial development finance platforms using the G20. So we hope that at the end of the G20 here in South Africa, we will be able to have a very clear sense of how South Africa then manage the cost-benefit analysis. So we say we know the costs of all of these things, but because research has not been done properly, we were not quite clear what are the benefits of all the things we've done since 1994 to place ourselves at a cold face in commanding position in all of those things. We know before this report, we knew the range of activities and how commendable they are. But we not always, and we would know what the outcomes in terms of decisions made, but we would not always know what the outcomes in relation to national interest would be. And that the balance between enlightened global interests and national interests, it's always important to sustain any foreign policy position, especially if it's a significant investment. Then we also, the report itself, if I may just run quickly to it now that I've explained the reason, the rationale behind doing this, is that South Africa has used many of these positions. That's what the report shows, the study shows, has used many of these to represent African interest globally. And that the continent can count its benefits, both materially and non-materially, from all of this. It is also confirmed that the South Africa's foreign policy has really framed and guided how the decision relating to how what events we host and which we share. So it's pretty much in line with our foreign policy objective. Yeah, and that's the maybe the next one. So when we commissioned this, we asked the researchers to analyze this on the basis of a selection of three opportunities relating to SADC, relating to IAU, relating to BRICS, and that was before the G20 happened, because they were more recent and the stuff we could have gone back to the 1990s that looked at this and said, what can we learn from this? And what do these tell us that can be extrapolated to interpret how we approach this, the extent to which there's a strategic calculus behind getting into this, beyond the immediate benefit of being on the stage. The study looked at how we approached the very eventful and very significant SADC summit of 2018. And it found that South Africa was able to shepherd some critical decisions relating to peace, socioeconomic development, and regional integration. And that was able to secure about 85 billion in pledged regional investments. The challenge is that there is no sense of whether we're able to track the implementation of these decisions around peace and socioeconomic development and regional integration, so that we can say the region is now better now, 7 years later, than it was when we hosted the SADC, because the decision is one thing, but the implementation of the decision is another. Whether South Africa went on then to protect its achievement by supporting the SADC organ, by engaging the member states to make sure that the decisions don't fall by the wayside. That is something we need to engage about to check whether we did or we did not. If we did not, how do we correct that for the future? The secured pledges also need to be accounted for. Pledges are pledges. In English, they say we don't count the chicken before the eggs are hatched. But you noted that you have so many eggs. They are potential chicks. Now, we do not, the study did not get a sense of how these pledges translated to actual investment, both across the continent and also in South Africa. So that might be an element related to how government keeps data and tracks data and places structure at the disposal of everybody to be able to do that. The researchers were able to talk to everybody involved there, different government departments, different agencies and stuff like that. Could not get a sense of how this pledge was tracked, so that we do not conclude maybe erroneously by mistake and say, no, we celebrated the pledges and we ended there and we thought it was done. The AU summit of 2020 was also very, very important to remember. It was very huge, and it happened in the context of COVID. But there were major decisions taken in relation to the free trade area for the region, in relation to conflict resolution, especially around Central Africa, around Mozambique, and the Sahel. Major decision on green gold, major decision on artificial intelligence, major decisions on gender-based violence and on gender development. Again, there is no sense of what has then been done after that to make sure that once a deal is clinched, it's then translated to real action, so that we are able to account for the actual benefit, not just for ourselves, but also for the continent from our efficient sharing. But we also saw very significant role by South Africa in uniting the continent, or in its response to COVID-19. Africa was among the most united regions of the world in terms of their responses to COVID-19. South Africa shepherded those, ran a very high-level initiative to keep them united, both in relation to how we respond to all the guidelines about how you manage this, so that the continent followed similar framework and followed best practice, working together with World Health Organization. It was an excellent display of how a country uses its significance to help a whole and therefore help itself. In relation to that, but also in relation to now fights that emerge in the, over the COVID vaccine. And that South Africa put up a spirited fight as part of a collective, led the continent on a collective fight over that, instead of individual desperate efforts in all of this to fight the vaccine nationalism and vaccine imperialism. When the countries of Europe, especially mostly, but also North America, sought to hoard the vaccines that were becoming available so that they can preserve it for their population and only share it with Africa and others once their population has been met, which was a completely unjust process. That was done, but as an outcome of that, South Africa shepherded a decision relating to now making sure never, never, never again we rely on others for vaccine. So we're going to boost vaccine development for all manner of diseases in Africa. The study does not find data to show what we have done then after finally clinching that deal about local vaccine development, whether we have done anything then to make sure that it is implemented, and whether we ourselves are implementing that, whether we are now developing vaccines on polio, vaccines on the flus that are in Africa, vaccines on malaria and cholera and all that. It's not very clear whether we went on to finish what we started. Then the 2013-2023 BRICS summit, again, led to major decisions. I've already indicated those decisions. But whether we have then went on to ensure that, for example, now that the BRICS Development Bank is in place, that it really actively finances industrialization projects on the African continent, in our region, and therefore in our country, and to our country's benefit. Because any industrial development that takes place in Southern Africa will almost always accrue more significant benefit for South Africa than for every else, which is why South Africa has to be regionalized in its approach to all of them, correctly so. But it's not just getting a deal, but it's getting that deal implemented so that the countries of the region, they benefit and South Africa also benefit. We're not quite clear whether that for the follow-through has happened from this study. And secondly, in line with the NDP decision, the NDP requirement of 2012, South Africa was supposed to increase its trade share with the countries of the Global South where trade was low, and harness its diplomatic closeness for economic cooperation. It's not quite clear that has been happening generally, and of course, even after Brand South Africa released a report, I think in 2017, which showed that there was a lot of interest in relations with South Africa, in South Asia, in Central Asia, in the Middle East, in the Caribbean, and in Latin America. But that the trade was lower than was expected by their side, which means we are being invited to come through. But it doesn't look like we've shifted, reinvested, reorganized to make sure that we take up that, because that's where growth is. That's where potential is, because our trade rate in those areas is rather lower than it could be. The trade relations with the BRICS, of course, remain strong, but they were strong even before 2013. Now, that's why we talk about whether we use this goodwill generated in 2013 to now grow them at a pace stronger than it was before, or it is now like before 2013, driven by individual initiatives. The Chinese, the Brazilians had grown a lot as well in that period. The Indians had grown a lot of trade, as India. So together they make up what we call BRICS growth, but that's individual. But after 2013, South Africa's masterful chairing of the 2013 summit should have led to growth that is not dependent on individual countries. But that needed work to be done. The economic impact on South Africa is quite significant, it's quite good, but it is not growing at a level higher than it was before South Africa chaired. So it's almost like natural growth. What have we done or what have we not done? But then the BRIC ties in economic terms and tangible terms, in technology terms, in cooperation, in cultural cooperation terms, in educational terms, are actually modest compared to those of the US and the EU. Though we consider BRICS to be our closest partner, but in reality, practical terms, that closeness does not relate to growing tangible relations and all that. And therefore, we have that challenge there of not breaking the old patterns. Our relationship with the global north, it's almost at its ceiling, fully harnessed and stuff like that. But the relationship with the global south is not harnessed. If you could bring the relationship with the global north, global south to the level the global north is in terms of level, you could then benefit a lot from this bridge building position we see ourselves in. So the trade, investment, trade cooperation with the global south remains under service. Some of the key findings says that the hosting and sharing, of course, is good for our PR, good for our image. It continues to add to our currency. But domestic constraints, that's how the researchers would put it, that they limit our follow-through, limit our ability to translate all of that goodwill into goods and services and technologies and benefits for the people of South Africa and the people of Africa generally. Those domestic constraints relate to what the NDP also pointed out. The NDP suggested that we have weak research capacity backing up our international relations. That we're still not data-driven. We're still not generating data. That the research capacity at DECO or DTI and all that is still very limited. It cannot generate data for you that shows that trade has been increasing or decreasing, where that cooperation has been growing or not growing. So there is a real problem. The NDP also indicated that there was a weakness in relation to strategic research capacity, which is analysis of actors and actor dynamics, analysis of what you could do to strike better deals with that one, to understand the actors and stuff like that. Mission reports are very good, but you need strategic analysis. That may come from state security agency, may come from DECO itself, from DTI, from the presidency, but that capacity among all the actors that would be science-based rather than merely value-based. Value-based is okay. It's very nice. Please make us feel good. But values don't always put food on the table, and values do not always sustain your significance in the world. It also found that there's a little bit of misalignment between political and economic gains. I know I will be digressing. This reminds me of a visit to Cuba, ladies and gentlemen, where the Cuban Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, that would have been in 2012, and says, please tell your government that we can feel their warmth. They really, really love us. They really, really like us. But it doesn't help to keep coming every year to tell us you love us. Can we move from loving to striking concrete deals? Do we have things we can offer? There are things we can offer. We don't need charity, we don't need, but let's move from merely political warmth to concrete cooperation. Found the same thing in Australia, but this report is finding that as well, that we've been very good with political goals. We're very good with being politically nimble, very good at political messaging, with the political side of diplomacy. But we are not as good with economic gains. And that is why the NDP in 2012 as well said one of the biggest challenges for South Africa is to significantly, it doesn't say just a bit, significantly upscale our economic diplomacy. Make sure you put in all the skills in there. Make sure you work out what are the mechanisms. Do you have to create an agency? Do you have to, what are the things we need to do in that area? Improve coordination between DTIC, with presidency, national treasury, and CODECO, and all of those kinds of things. Look at what are the best cases in the world. How does Singapore does it? How does Vietnam does it? Because it's doing it very well. Indonesia is now improving a lot. How does it do it? But now when you hear in the media a statement from the Minister of DTIC saying that we have not redeployed our trade diplomats for more than a decade, then you realize, I mean, if we don't have trade attaché in significant diplomatic missions where there's a huge trade, if you look about South Korea, for example, or you look at Brazil or Argentina, if you look at Mexico or something like that, if you don't have trade attaché for those areas, your economic diplomacy is really dependent on broad political messaging rather than deal making and attracting, connecting businesses to businesses and so on and so on. So we were pleased when we saw that the Minister for Trade and Industry has noted that and wants to change that, because South Africa used to have a large number, I think there was over 50 trade diplomats deployed throughout the world, and apparently now they've diminished to almost zero. Because at some point, somebody might have decided we don't need this trade yet. Political ambassadors are sufficient. So that's something that needs to be checked. Lack of a guiding strategic framework for hosting and chairing, that we have it in our head, but there's nothing on the ground that says, now if you get an opportunity this today, they say, please chair the UNCTAD, the UN conference on trade and development. We would decide on the basis of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we will be able to inform Parliament we are doing it because of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rather than having a general view of its importance, it's significant. So not a non-scientific decision making, a non-scientific strategic calculus. And that you need that guiding framework and not just rely on institutional memory and that in our brain we know what is good and what is not good. A modern developmental state has to be very scientifically driven, data driven. It is able to justify the spending of taxpayers' money for long-term benefit. So long-term benefits require very deliberate planning, and you need a full diplomatic planning system, just as you need a water planning system and all that. It's not enough to have an annual plan, a third plan, an entire system that explains the interfaces of all of those kinds of things. Otherwise, you think you are punching above your weight when you are actually punching above your invisible weight, and your visible weight remain untouched. There were contextual challenges that were noted that we need to think about. Global volatility, I don't need to explain this. We know now with the Trump positioning taking place right now, with the trade war between US and China affecting us, with the war in Ukraine affecting us in certain areas of trade, and other areas of global volatility. So they are not far from us. They are important things we should contribute to do that. So the president's intervention to try and bring Ukraine and Russia together should be a welcome boost towards our economic diplomacy too. Shifting power dynamics, new institution, competing interests, especially on the African continent, is also a major issue. Some emerging interests, including from within Africa, are there to checkmate South Africa and diminish South Africa. Then there's domestic uncertainty and domestic constraints. We refer to some of the weaknesses and incapacities and work we don't do domestically. Weakened institutional capacity. The report refers to that institutional capacity between the presidency with a very strong research and strategic capacity, the DECO with its own strong research and strategic capacity, DTIC, National Treasury, and other related departments, the entire international cooperation area. And that South Africa needs to keep thinking about how it improves the strategic leadership approach, rather than merely trying to get to a leadership position and be less strategic about how it approaches that. There are things that need to be resolved, long-term, short-term interest, because some decisions are made out of short-term interest, going to a summit, hold a summit, get a lot of publicity, you are going to move to another body. The link between long-term and short-term interest must be clear in that strategic framework. Report also suggests that we need to make sure that our commitment to African agenda is also credible. It is not paternalistic. It is not just in words, but it is because we know that if the continent is boosted in any way, trade to the continent tends to happen through South African ports, South African logistics, South African transport system, South African financial sector. So it is a genuine commitment, but that also is of national interest. Event management versus strategic goals, we suggest that we should be as savvy about strategic goals as we are about events management, because we are not an events management country, we are a strategic country. And I will not go into this because I've spoken to them earlier on. Some of the current challenges with regards to institutional capacity is weak monitoring and evaluation of event and trading outcomes. As I indicated, there is no collection of data. We don't know where data is. Inadequate accounting for events and trading opportunities. We haven't seen departments going to parliament to say, we have used 500 million or we used 100 million or 20 million for this. These are the long-term benefits that have come out of this conference that we hosted in 2023 or something of that nature. And reporting tends to focus on public image and less on measurable result. The recommendations have already been shared. The lessons learned from other countries, I'm going towards the close now, are that if you look at China, it leverages international fora for economic and political significance. China has specific detailed data about how it used Beijing, the Beijing Olympics of 1994 and the Beijing Gender Conference. It used that to place itself at different levels. It had account for ripple effect, for snowballing effect. It can account on those because it has the research and scientific capacity that it holds within government, not consultancies outside government, but within government. There are institutes such as we have at DTIC. At DTIC, we have a very good institute there, but we don't know whether that is being used fully to do the same thing as the Chinese do. Rwanda uses platform like the Kigali Dialogue, a much smaller country. They murder that, but it makes so much out of everything. They use the Kigali Dialogue, for example, to win designation as a hub for big data, for the UN Big Data Initiative. Now, the big data platform, the fifth one in the world, was established in Rwanda. And everybody was shocked. How come Rwanda got this? There are sophisticated countries like South Africa, like Morocco, like Egypt and all that. No, Rwanda positioned itself strategically for this. It used the dialogue to attract certain kinds of people, but it knew exactly what it wanted to achieve over the long term. It was not just looking at the beauty of the dialogue and the publicity of the dialogue, but the production of a dialogue over the long term. UAE has hosted only a few, very, very few activities, but they account for its activities. How do we know? We get data from them and they publicize data. It is scientific, it is verified, it is done by credible people, but it is government data. And so South Africa could learn a lot from all of this and continue. In closing, we need to update our foreign policy framework continuously. It's a duty. We always have to do so that we can do this game a little better. We need to strengthen parliamentary oversight over international engagements, not a general policy, foreign policy thing, but these big things that cost a lot, that can benefit us a lot. We need perhaps Parliament to assist to get the system to wake up to the need to be more strategic to all of this. We may need a foreign policy forum of some sort, such as the Kigali Dialogue, the Aswan Forum. India has it, Brazil has it. They use them very strategically to attract some value. We may need to re-establish the de-established South African Council on International Relations. It was very useful. It brought former diplomats together with experts in international relations and some parliamentarians and members of government to discuss what is of significance for us. And that is what has been helping Europe, the Europe Foreign Policy Council, the US Foreign Policy Council. They help them think through all of these things with the benefit of the full capacity that a country has. We need to strengthen DECO's policy research unit and the presidency coordinating unit. There was something that being reestablished from the former presidential PICAS, presidential coordinating and unit that was there before. You need to strengthen these because they really do help us manage long-term benefits. We need to, I've said this, revise the sharing guidelines. We need a clear communications and branding strategy beyond just the events. We need more sector-specific studies. We need more studies to be done in this area to look at very specific things. Like this G20 this year, it will require a study to look at how much did it cost us, both financially and non-financially, and how much does it benefit us and the country. We need to advocate for extended SADC chairship so that a country chairs 2 years, 3 years, so that it is able to manage the outcome of all of that. We need to implement a very rigorous monitoring and evaluation of events. I wish to thank you. I will not bore you with a conclusion. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I hope it was clear. Thank you.
Very clear, Professor Zondi. Thank you very much for that succinct presentation. Do you have any member of your team wishing to do amplification?
Colleagues from the Planning Commission, anyone who wants to reinforce any point or add anything? Ambassador Omar?
Thank you, Professor Sipamandla. I'm sorry, I don't know why my video isn't coming on, so you can't see my pretty face here. No, I think, Chair, having spent about 10 years in the diplomatic corps, I was ambassador to Oman and then I was ambassador to Abu Dhabi. I can attest to the points that the study is making. I was lucky in that when I was in Abu Dhabi, we did have a trade attaché. And the person was based in Dubai, where a lot of the trade goes. But what we also managed to do was we were able to attract and spend a lot of time networking and lobbying people that take investment decisions. Now, often people don't realize there's a very completely different mindset between trade and investment. Investment needs to actually get into things like pension funds and even the family office of large high net worth families, etc., etc. So I think that was quite a useful experience, which we shared with DIRCO and with other colleagues in the region because we're facing similar things. I think the part about how do we get more out of the events we organize cannot be overstated. We have, I think at the end of these major events, I think we all just sigh a big sigh of relief and then want to move on. Having been part of the country team under former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, for the World Conference Against Racism, I could feel the kind of potential these kind of events have while they're happening and even for things after that, especially for political lobbying and then obviously tourism and then making the place attractive for a number of reasons. So I think with those comments, I don't want to belabor the point, Chair. I think we look forward to the engagement with your committee. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Omar. Thanks very much. If there's no other member from the Commission who would like to amplify the presentation done by the professor, honorable members, we can now proceed to taking your hands to comment, to ask questions, to make inquiries for better elevation of our understanding in as far as these matters are concerned. We will start with Honorable Wesley Douglas, to be followed by Honorable Nobile Mhlongo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me greet you and all the listeners and Professor Zondi and the team in the name of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and wish you all well. Hope you had a good break and we're getting straight back to work. We thank you for the presentation. It was very insightful and well balanced, and I think that we could learn a lot more. And thank you for the team that has, supported the committee and the work that we've been doing. And the institutional memory is really greatly appreciated. But Honourable Chair, the ANC GNU government, speaks about punching above its own weight in its own, internal propaganda. But the truth is very much different from that. The picture that's being painted is not exactly what the truth is about how South Africa is doing in international relations. As Professor Zondi pointed out, for decades, South Africa has chaired the African Union twice, SADC 3 times, and hosted 2 BRICS summits, amongst others. While they boast of African agency and continental integration, the facts reveal a disturbing truth of empty chairpersonships, broken promises, and mismanaged opportunities. I want to drill down into this presentation, into Professor Zondi's key findings of this presentation. And the one thing I want to talk about is that 85 billion rand in pledged investments in SADC. Where is the tangible benefit for South Africans? 85 billion rand is a lot of money, Mr. Chair, and our people are suffering and are poor. Where is the benefits of this to us directly at the poorest of the poor in terms of infrastructure? Where's the jobs that this 85 billion rand has crafted for our people? Has this opened up international markets for us in the SADC region? Is this part of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement? Has this created smoother transactions for our people over the borders? What has this 85 billion rand done to undo the red tape, to help our black and our colored and our Khoisan manufacturers to be able to come from a township economy and make products that can go into the SADC region? Has this 85 billion rand helped them get access to financing and to funding to help them with their exporting business? Because if there's an offtake agreement created by this 85 million rand for our black entrepreneurs, for our youth entrepreneurs that are looking for jobs, they're not asking for handouts, they're asking, give us the opportunity to make products and sell them to our neighbors. Is that 85 billion rand worth of investment actually going to help those young people? Is it going to help us as black business? And that's what I want to see. And from the numbers, it doesn't seem like there is any tangible benefit for us. So we need to do a cost benefit analysis on this in terms of how we can actually change this, because this is not great political leadership. We must understand that we need to change our international relations policy, Mr. Chair, to be focused on economic diplomacy. Because it looks like it's the ANC and the GNU and the DA is focused on cutting ribbons and appearing nice and having functions and just putting a plaster on the wound. We need our international relations policy to be focused on the poor, to be outward focused, and to make sure that every money we spend benefits the people. When we look at the AU priorities versus the pandemic, that excuses and the things that we've heard in that presentation, we will look at conflict resolution and AI development. All of these things is seemingly swept aside with COVID-19 as a convenient excuse. But during the same period, Rwanda has had better governance and still managed to grow its economic footprint during that pandemic period. We can't use things like a pandemic and what we've had to go through as an excuse. That's poor leadership. It's bad political leadership, and we need to do better for our people. When we look at BRICS over the past 10 years, as in the presentation highlighted by Professor Zondi, 2030 to 2023, investment into South Africa from BRICS sits at a mere 4%. With only 14% of our country's total exports going to BRICS nations. This is a travesty. There's other countries that aren't even part of BRICS that are still waiting to be members of BRICS that are doing 10, 20, 30, 100 times more trade than we are, Mr. Chair. This is ridiculous. We've known about this opportunity. We know about the markets. We were in China last year as a committee, and they said, we're waiting for South African businesses to come. We're waiting for your businesses to come and be a part of our trade shows, our exhibitions. Come and we will help you. But our DIRCO as it sit there with their hands tied doing nothing, and it's only benefiting old white monopoly capital companies that are all in China, that are all in these BRICS countries, that are in Russia, that are benefiting. We just heard from our agricultural minister, John Steenhuisen, in the last sitting before we finished last term. We just heard him say, because of what they as the DA did, along with Solidarity, along with AfriForum, by going to America and bad-mouthing us for years, not just now, but for years, the DA has been going there and bad-mouthing us, and it cost us a goer. Now they conveniently are saying, no, we are going to work with Russia, and we are going to go to Russia, and we are going to have to take our farming produces to Russia. And they're saying it's because of the economy, and it's not about the economy, it's because of their own bad relationships, and because they hated President Putin and calling for him to be arrested when he gets to South Africa. Now they want to cozy up to them because of things that they've done, Mr. Chair. We need to make sure who is running this government, whose economic policy and foreign policy is running this government. Is it the DA or the ANC? Are we going to go down the route where and to see that in the numbers that was mentioned by the NPC, that we still have the most of our trade with the West, most of our trade with EU, most of our trade with the West, and like only 14% of our country's total exports going to BRICS. I mean, this is political suicide. This is who's leading our geopolitical guidance and policy as a country? Who's the one that's, because anybody with a brain could have seen that BRICS is where we should be going. That's where we've been protecting ourselves for years, but we by being part of a multipolar world. But now our actions are still going to the West as opposed to going to new markets for us as Black people. So despite the two major BRICS summits, South Africa's total investment from BRICS nations is only 4%. We need to grow the underserviced relationship with the global south. And again, the DA and the junior leadership is either incompetent or nefarious in doing so. Can they not read the global geopolitical room? The lack of trade attaches is also purposeful, and this was highlighted specifically by Professor Zondi, where how can we have a focus on trade and economic diplomacy, which is where our people will benefit the most, if we do not even have trade attaches, and if we're using austerity measures and things that are said to us by the IMF and World Bank to be able to stop our people from getting trade attaches. The world is benefiting from BRICS, but South Africa is halfway in and halfway out. We need to be non-aligned in terms of how we do things. And how can a place like Rwanda and other African countries benefit far more from the BRICS relationships and continue through hard economic times while we get affected badly by the current trade war, Mr. Chair? Where's the monitoring and evaluation of all our international events? The NPC report itself admits that there is weak monitoring and evaluation. Billions are spent, yet there's no transparent accounting of outcomes. Who is benefiting? Who is the fiduciary responsibility for that money? Is it Treasury or the minister? Who must we hold account that the money is gone missing? And we can't really give a cost to benefit ratio for that. It's not just that the money spent, it's like what have we benefited from these international events, Mr. Chair? Or is it just a photo opportunity? We need to make sure that this is weak interministerial coordination with limited oversight and blatant neglect. Why it's important, Mr. Chair, is because we're spending billions again this year on the G20 summits. We are the chairpersonship of the G20, and now we've got event after event after event. If we look back through the MPC, we see that there's very poor monitoring evaluation. We don't even know where the monies went half the time. We need a breakdown from the department on exactly where that money has gone. And has it gone to the usual suspects? Has it gone to white monopoly capital? Has it gone to politically connected people in the DA, in the ANC? Where has that money been spent? We want to find that out, because it hasn't gone to poor black elite people. It hasn't gone back to the SMMEs and the township economy, Mr. Chair. When there's no concrete investment monitoring or implementation, only some ceremonial gatherings, BRICS Business Council pledges. There's billions promised, but provincial governments remain cash-strapped and poverty is deepening. Hundreds of millions are being spent on international junkets with no tangible benefits to South African communities. Where's the auditing of these events? Where's the transparency and where's the accountability? I also want to raise something that Professor Zondi said in passing, and I want to disagree just slightly with you here, Professor. You know, you try to paint President Cyril Ramaphosa's hosting of Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky as an opportunity for economic diplomacy. But this narrative is misleading and fundamentally dangerous to South Africa's long-term strategic interests. For decades, South Africa has leveraged its position within BRICS as a bulwark against Western economic dominance, aligning with multipolar global power rather than Western hegemony. Zelensky's visit directly threatens this balance. This shows the influence of the Democratic Alliance is having on the ANC-GNU, and it makes us mourn the loss of ANC's revolutionary roots. And that mandate we now carry as MK, because we are going to make sure that we remain non-aligned, but that we take advantage of the Global South and the BRICS relationship. BRICS has been South Africa's strategic counterbalance to Western financial institutions like the IMF and World Bank. The New Development Bank alone has financed over $5 billion in development projects across Africa, including infrastructure, energy, and urban development. Some of it within South Africa, but the majority in other African partners. Hosting President Zelensky risks alienating key partners like Russia and China, who have been vocal against NATO aggression and Western economic imperialism, Mr. Chair. Is the ANC now shifting its allegiance from BRICS to NATO-friendly states under pressure from the DA? These are things that we need answers to, because it has real-world impact for us as South Africans, Mr. Chair, and for our South African businesses. As we have seen by the cancellation of AGOA. Rand's worth of wheat and other foodstuff from Russia in 2024 alone. Any diplomatic fracture risks food security for us as South Africans, and wheat touches the poorest of the poor. So, you know, this was not a very well thought through trust. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Chair.
Sorry to disrupt your flow.
Yes.
You got frozen. If you can start, you go back to a sentence that starts with, as we have seen. You got frozen a few seconds, yeah. As we have seen, that's where you got frozen.
Okay.
You were talking about Ukraine.
Yeah. No, that's fine, Mr. Chair. We just want to say that we have to, our non-aligned position is non-negotiable. We must reject all attempts to keep the old way of doing things the same, because economically and geopolitically it's not wise. We need to make sure that our relationships benefit all of us as South Africans and the poorest of the poor. The ANC and GNU is maintaining the 30 years of our people's exclusion from global markets, and we now need to change it, and that's what MK wants to do, Mr. Chair. So, in closing, Mr. Chair, I just want to say the ANC and GNU has turned international relations into a photo shoot and an economic ego parade, leaving our people hungry while ministers shake hands in five-star hotels. We want that every summit, every pledge, every international handshake must benefit the poor, uplift the marginalized, empower our communities. We want economic diplomacy and benefit to the citizens of South Africa and to the poorest of the poor, Mr. Chair. So I want to thank Professor Zondi, and I want to just close with these few remarks. And I just want to say, watch this space for G20. There's going to be a lot more corruption. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Douglas. Honorable Ngobile Mhlongo.
Thank you, Chair. Greetings to yourself, colleagues, and Prof. I hope I am audible enough, Chair, and I'm asking to keep my video off so that I can have better network coverage, because where I am, I doubt that I've got proper coverage. Am I audible, Chair? Okay. Chair,
You're
am I
audible,
audible?
Honorable Mhlongo.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair. I was worried about my network coverage. No, thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation by the Prof. Chair, we have previously stated this as the EFF in this committee. Now it feels like we're going to have to repeat issues that we have previously raised. Firstly, Chair, you've got ministers that are signing trade deals on our behalf as a country. These trade deals, Chair, we've never had a committee where the ministers come and report and account on these trade deals that have signed on behalf of the country, and really to come and evaluate those deals, evaluate the pros and cons, their benefits and the disadvantages of these deals for South Africa, what it means to sign a trade deal with a certain country on these certain issues or on certain trade items. And really have them coming here to report, including Derko and any other minister, whether it's Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Trade and Industry, to come to explain to us as Parliament how these deals are going to benefit South Africa. Now, that's a problem we have, Chair, that we have ministers freestyling to sign trade deals internationally that we don't know how they are going to benefit the majority of South Africans. That's the first thing, Chair, we wanted to raise, that let's summon these ministers. I remember in one committee when we raised this, Chair, you were amicable to have ministers coming to explain to us the trade deals that have signed. I think we made an example of AGOA, to have the Minister of Trade and Industry coming to the committee to explain to us how is AGOA benefiting South Africans, what are the benefits of it, what are the disadvantages of it, and how many companies have benefited from it, how many jobs have been created, what is the contribution of that of AGOA in terms of the GDP of the country, in terms of contributions to the growth of the country. Now, Chair, this South Africa has been given a number of opportunities to chair different structures, whether in SADC as the region or in the continent or globally, like we've seen now with the G20. But how has it benefited South Africa? What are ordinary South African citizens benefiting for this from us hosting such and chairing such events, Chair? We must be able to evaluate them. We must be able to put in terms of monetary value the money we spend as a country. Like we've heard Prof saying that India and Brazil, India spent over $1 billion hosting the G20. The Global Summit G20. Brazil also spent over 500 million. Now, at the end of the G20 presidents of South Africa in November this year, We must be able to evaluate that this is how much it costed the country to host the G20 summit. And from that, how then does it benefit ordinary citizens of this country? Or how then does it contribute towards building the economy of the country? Because when we've got a stronger economy, it means our people are going to get jobs, our people are going to benefit. But more worried for us, Chair, as the EFF, is the fact that it seems like when we are hosting these global events, whether it's in the region, SADC, continent, or globally, it seems like South Africa is the big cities. Most of these events are hosted in whether it's Cape Town, Johannesburg, Tshwane, Durban. We are leaving behind other municipalities. We are leaving behind the majority of our communities. Most of these events get to be hosted in the metros. What about the other municipalities, Chair? They've got beautiful infrastructure. They've got hotels. They've got conference venues, beautiful infrastructure that could be utilized. In fact, it doesn't even have, we don't have to host these events in the metros, in the main. We need to empower our local communities, which are far in the rural areas, which have, by the way, beautiful facilities, Chair. You can go to Limpopo in the rural municipalities. They've got beautiful facilities that could be utilized, that are at 5-star level hotels. 5-star level hotels, 5-star level boutique hotels, 5-star level conference facilities that could be utilized to host these events, to promote other towns in the country, to promote other municipalities and our townships and our rural areas. But we are always tempted to take these big events to the metros, which I really don't understand. Is these global platforms meant only for the benefit of people who are found living in the metropolitan cities, at the majority of the people who are found outside of the metropolitan municipalities? Chair, if we were to build the economy of South Africa, we'll need to have deliberate efforts to ensure that we take investment, to ensure that we advertise and promote the other cities in order to build new industrial sites, in order to build new big cities that are going to be at the same level as metros. So, but if we continuously take every event to the metropolitan municipalities and leaving out the beautiful facilities we have in the other rural areas and the township, it's really a cause for concern for me. Now, Chair, how do we measure achievements of having chaired these different bodies? Take, for example, we have chaired AU twice. But, from chairing AU twice, Chair, what I can remember as our legacy as South Africa, that we need to really say that, are we proud of that legacy or not? One, the only legacy I can clearly remember from the top of my mind is the fact that having chaired AU twice, in 2017, what we did when we were chairing AU, we readmitted Morocco, a country that has illegally occupied Western Sahara, and you come and we are told that the position of South Africa in terms of foreign policy is non-aligned. Clearly, Chair, it is aligned, because we have taken a decision as South Africa when we chaired AU to readmit Morocco, which has illegally occupied Western Sahara. What does it mean for the people of Western Sahara in terms of South Africa's position on the illegal occupation of their country by Morocco? So, Chair, I don't understand what we mean when we say that we have taken a non-aligned position. Our foreign policy in South Africa is non-aligned. For me, that is aligned. We have taken a decision on the side of the oppressor instead of siding with the weak in this instance. Now, Chair, if we can get a thorough report, Prof explains to us that this research that they've done and this report they've complied, it does not have the real content, the real meat we're looking for, because there's no thorough reporting and evidence and reporting in terms of what are the benefits of having chaired these events. I'll give you an example, Chair. In 2010, South Africa hosted the FIFA World Cup. To this day, Chair, you can see the benefits of having hosted FIFA World Cups. We have infrastructure, stadiums that to this day we are still utilizing in South Africa, more than almost 15 years later of having hosted the FIFA World Cup. Now, those are the tangible benefits we need when we are hosting this event. When we are chairing and hosting this global events, Chair, it must be something that benefits South Africa, not in the immediate in terms of hotel bookings. You know, the tourism industry is not sustainable when you have a program once in a while, you are hosting guests and then they book and they leave. We need something which is sustainable, Chair, sustainable in the long run. How so? Like I'm pointing out to you, Chair, that FIFA World Cup, we still have stadiums here in South Africa that is being utilized by the PSL, is being utilized to generate revenue for the country, and is being utilized to create job opportunities. Every time there's an event at a sporting stadium, we see our people selling items outside of the stadium, generating revenue for themselves. So after having chaired AU twice, we must have a thorough, comprehensive report which explains to us these are the agenda items that, this was the mission of South Africa. This is what we wanted to achieve from chairing AU. And having set these priorities for ourselves, did we achieve them, or we made decisions that are by the way decisions that had no permanent impact on the lives of South Africa, Chair. So we must be able to do that. Chair, we need to go to AU and PAP in order to start the process of de-dollarization. It's very important in order to build the economy of Africa and the economy of South Africa. Our economy can't permanently depend on the dollar. We have seen what is happening now with the re-election of Donald Trump, what is happening in this country and all over the world. Now, America is using the dollar to weaken economies all over the world, to impose tariffs that are so ridiculous. Why? Because we have failed to build alternative markets for ourselves. Chair, you know, I don't understand why we didn't go to the global south and to the rest of Africa to build an alternative market so that we have a stronger economy. We build even like our own African currency that we can use to trade amongst ourselves. I don't know, Chair, why as South Africa, which is one of the biggest and most strong economy in the SADC region, why we are not influencing to have a currency that will be used here first in SADC in order to trade amongst ourselves, Chair. When I say a currency that must come from South Africa, I'm not referring to the rand, Chair. We need to build our own currency that is decolonized, Chair, because we know that the rand is a currency of the colonizer that was brought to us. I mean, our own currency that we can have in SADC that will demonstrate that we are a natural mineral resource rich country, a currency for Africa that will demonstrate what we are a mineral resource rich country. So those are the things we should be looking at, Chair, on how to benefit ourselves. But to continuously have these events, Chair, and we don't get a thorough report or feedback as Parliament, how this has benefited South Africa, how much it was spent on it, and how we have benefited, how we have created entrepreneurs and local and build new industries in our country from hosting and chairing regional, continental, and global events is really a PR exercise. Like the Prof said, it makes us good look on PR. It's a good image, Chair, to portray, but really we need something sustainable, something that shows that we're hosting a G20. Hopefully by end of G20 presidency, by next year, we'll be able to get a report, Chair, how much we have spent and what are the benefits that we're able to leverage from having hosted G20 and having a presidency of G20, Chair. But also I'm interested in these past events that we've had of chairing AU and having chaired SADC numerous times. What is it that we can bring home? 6th Parliament, Chair, South Africa in the 6th Parliament was chairing SADC region in Pan-African Parliament and other numerous times. What has that brought for the people of South Africa. How has that benefited us? We have chaired SADC numerous times, Chair, and if you ask me, what is it that we have tried to do or have done that we can point to this day and say, this is the legacy of having chaired SADC. This is the legacy of having chaired AU. What is it that we can point out to and proudly say, this is the legacy of a legacy that has meaningful contribution? Because when we chair these things, mainly in our mind is to bring economic opportunities, is to bring investment. In terms of investment, these ministers are saying they're attracting some of them, some investors. But do we go back and evaluate this investment that is here? Is it at the benefit of South Africa, or it's an investment that seeks to undermine the sovereignty of the country? So I'm really concerned about those things, Chair. And hopefully moving forward, we'll be able to get ministers, Chair. I'm still again lobbying this committee that let's summon ministers who sign trade deals on our behalf to come to this committee and explain how those trade deals benefit us as a country, what are the benefits for us, and we evaluate if indeed this deal is benefiting the majority of our people or is going to contribute positively in terms of contributing towards our GDP or not. Or are we signing trade deals that are meant for the same group of people that have now been offered a resettlement deal in the US, really, or is it benefiting? Because in South Africa, Chair, our legacy in South Africa does not allow us to view anything that government does, and we don't bring the demographics of the country. Everything of South African government that does, demographics of the country is important. All of us, Chair, when we are born, our birth certificate has a part which says race. It's very important, that thing. It's done deliberately so that we are able to redress injustices of the past and ensure that deals that we sign as the country don't only benefit a minority group or a certain sector of society, leaving out the majority of our people behind. I'm really worried about villages and townships that don't get to host such events, Chair. Perhaps we can be told one day, why is it that G20 is in the metros and we don't have maybe 3 or 4 events of G20 that will be hosted in one rural municipality outside of the metropolitan? I'd really love to hear what's the thinking behind that. And you can't say you will not go to Northwest because, for example, Northwest, there's no airport, people can't connect. Northwest had an airport. The airport was run down. Why is the airport of Northwest closed? Because when you have an airport, it is a mode of transport that makes it easier for business people to land at your airport, for business, for investors and for attendees of an event to have an ease of mode of transport to access the area. So we must really be told, Chair, why certain decisions are being done, why the airport has been run down in Northwest, and now people perhaps are running away from hosting events in Northwest because there is no airport. It will be a logistical nightmare to arrive in Northwest after having landed either in Lanseria or OR Tambo. So we must explore our thinking, Chair, as this committee, because I feel like we are the umbrella committee of all committees. International relations, we should be able to bring other ministers of other departments to come here to account, because there are decisions that they make, they affect either positively or negatively the image of South Africa in the global space. So it can't be that perhaps we'll be told that we are international relations, you should only summon the minister of international relations and cooperation. No, we should be able to have powers to summon any minister from any department, because the decisions that they make at the end of the day affect the work and the image of South Africa on how we want to play our global politics at the global stage. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ngobile Mhlongo. Is the Dr. Bengu we have here, the CFO? Oh, it's not the CFO. Okay.
Oh, I am here, but thanks for the title of CFO.
No,
there must be a mistake.
I got our CFO is Bengu, so I thought maybe it's the CFO of Darko.
Okay,
You're
no
welcome,
problem.
Dr.
Thank you. No problem.
I wanted to the CFO, but you are welcome, Dr. Good to see you too. Our next will be the Honorable Nditiwe Kumba.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for that. Just had a bit of network issues. Firstly, let me start by greeting yourself, Chairperson, and the members of the committee and also the members from the MPC, and also welcome the report or presentation rather, which was presented by Mr. Zondi, and appreciate its comprehensive and insightful nature. Chairperson, mine is just to firstly emphasize that the most important aspect, when we deal with matters such as summits and chairing global bodies is the aspect of monitoring the implementation of the resolutions. I think it's the most critical aspect which can give us many answers in the long run and also ensure that we achieve our national interests. And also the implementation of the trade agreements is also critical. I think we need to establish monitoring mechanisms to ensure that the summit outcomes are implemented. And we must also learn from our past engagements, and also even, for example, the BRICS summit resolutions are very critical in monitoring the implementation. And one of the resolutions, as one of my colleagues mentioned, was the de-dollarization process to pace up that process. So this is just one of the things that I think we need to sharpen our tools on, is the monitoring mechanisms we need to put in place. And then also, I think we need strategic mechanisms need to be taken into account to ensure that the debt of these summits and what we incur does not affect or take away from development we are trying to achieve. And the benefits need to also, or rather the benefits of the summits must be part and parcel to ensure that South Africa is a better place and the people of South Africa benefit. So it's just one of those things I just thought I should highlight. And just another point, Chair, I think we need to move away from middle power diplomacy to a more of a pan-African strategic broker approach, which will ensure that we push African solutions on a global stage, when it comes to issues such as just energy transition and food security. I think championing Africa's collective leverage instead of solo gains, which is important, considering even our own reality in South Africa is important. We need to convene many African coalitions before global events to amplify the continent's bargaining power, through SADC and AU. And then also, I think public accountability is important. We need public post-event reports, which should be presented going forward, because these we never get post-event reports, or rather they stay through certain platforms. So I think the public accountability part is very important to ensure that where did we go with these events? Where did we go with chairing certain bodies? So I think the public accountability, even through dashboards and reports, is very important. And then I think, the focusing on deliverables, I think, has been mentioned. And then I think we also need an institutional legacy. We need to launch initiatives that endure beyond SA's term in these bodies, like knowledge platforms and funding mechanisms, or technical cooperation frameworks. So I think the institutional legacy and working on it is very important, so that it's not just a tick in the box exercise that we once formed part of these platforms. And then lastly, I think we need to create a sort of youth inclusion hubs. With these summits and bodies, we need to we need young people to be directly channeled into summit proceedings and shaping the outcome of not only our term in these bodies, but also the summit approach. Because at the end of the day, whatever decisions that will be taken will affect them in essence and even coming generations. So I think that's something also that is never taken into task. Even if it's taken into task, it's not deliberate, it's not intentional. It's just one of those compliance matters. So I think young people need to be directly channeled into these processes too. And I think I've been covered by my other colleagues, Chair. Yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Andisiwe Kumbacha. Honorable Ryan Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair, and allow me to express my gratitude to Professor Zondi for, I think, what was a very insightful and interesting presentation. I think that there was one sentence in particular that stood out for me, and it was on slide 7, which referred to the key findings. And it referenced in particular what Professor Zondi said was a misalignment between political goals and economic gains. And I think that that sentence in particular really summed up one of the key issues, not just with South Africa's foreign policy, but with South Africa's domestic policy, and obviously the knock-on effect that the latter has on the former. And I say that because South Africa has routinely, stubbornly clung to ideology over embracing a pragmatic approach to really encouraging what we need so desperately in our country, which is foreign direct investments and job creation. And we've spoken, and what I appreciated the most, I think, from Professor Zondi's presentation is that he spoke about the many countries in the world on the global system who have very similar socioeconomic circumstances to South Africa, like Indonesia, like Brazil, like India, like Malaysia, that have really moved beyond a stubborn cling to ideology and actually reassess the global climate and position themselves adequately and appropriately to leverage their role in the system for their own personal interests. And I think, again, it is rooted within South Africa having to reassess what our national interest is and how we are going to reflect what our national interest is within our foreign policy dynamic. And this is a problem that has been pointed out to South Africa and certainly pointed out to DIRCO on a number of occasions. And I'll quote the most recent one, which actually came from the World Bank earlier this year. The World Bank released a report titled Driving Inclusive Economic Growth in South Africa, in which international financial experts singled out weak market competition and inefficient institutions as the main culprits behind our country's sluggish economic performance and stubbornly high unemployment rates. And the World Bank actually made recommendations to South Africa. They said that South Africa could really leapfrog and completely catalyze economic growth and foreign direct investments and job creation if they eased race-based policies such as BEE and relaxed the labor framework to make it less demanding for foreign companies to invest in the country. So South Africa needs foreign direct investment, and we need to make it as easy as possible for funds to be injected into our economy to create jobs. And if we look at the governments of national unity, the basic minimum program of priority states quite clearly that we want rapid, inclusive economic growth. So we've had, the writing is on the wall. I don't know how much more clear we need to make it to the Department of International Relations and Cooperation that what we need to be leveraging the most from our foreign policy is economic diplomacy. We desperately, desperately need to inject foreign direct investment into South Africa. We need to build the manufacturing sector. We need to build industry, and we need to get South Africans into jobs. That is the main problem at the center of every single social ill in South Africa. It doesn't help if we run around, using buzzwords such as neocolonialism and the evil West and whatever else, the opposition parties might want to paint this issue out to be. The reality is that South Africa is deeply, deeply unequal, and it is like that as a result of a failed economic policy and certainly failed economic diplomacy, which is at the center of this. And I think therein lies the problem. And we really need to be honest with ourselves moving forward, and we need to make an honest assessment of South Africa's economic standing on the international stage. Now, I want to speak specifically to some points that were made by some of the other honorable members, and maybe just debunk some of the myths, I think, that have been said. The Honorable Mhlongo said that, rightly so, we need to understand what the benefits are of certain trade agreements, and we need to understand how those benefit South Africans of all backgrounds and on all levels. And she spoke specifically to AGOA. Well, the data on AGOA is actually widely available, and I can give some of the information to the committee. On an annual basis, AGOA facilitates, and this is just AGOA alone, outside of trade with the USA, just the preferential access that we have to the US market through AGOA, facilitates 76 billion rand in trade, according to the latest figure. And that creates around 600,000 jobs, depending on the stats that you use, but it's within that vicinity. Trade with the United States outside of AGOA equates to 156 billion rand. Now, that's not small money. It really is not small money. And I think that when we look at trade with foreign countries, we always tend to look at who is South Africa's largest trading partner and how is that determining where South Africa's international allegiance lies. Well, yes, that's all fine and well, but you need to actually take a qualitative assessment of South Africa's trade, both in terms of import and export, to really see what is benefiting our country domestically and what is actually in line with South Africa's national interests. And if you look at the nature of trade between, let's take, I would say, the top three largest trading partners of South Africa. We've got China at number one. I think number two would be the European Union, and the United States of America probably at number three, according to the latest findings that I've seen. The use of AGOA in South Africa, and certainly the trade that we have with the European Union and the United Kingdom, is largely based on the manufacturing sector. I would say that between 60 to 70%, at least from the latest stats that I've seen, of South Africa's exports are manufactured goods that we send to the West. And that comes in the form of, if you look at AGOA alone, the agri-processing industry and certainly the automobile sector. South Africa has become a prime manufacturing destination for right-hand drive vehicles and specific models at that. So we manufacture the BMW X3 exclusively, the Mercedes-Benz C-Class, the VW Polo for right-hand drive markets. Those are manufacturing sectors that create jobs. There are huge factories in PE and Uitenhage, East London and Pretoria because of those investments. And so the nature of the trade that we have with the West that's been demonized now as some sort of neoliberal force or neo-colonialist force, I mean, there's a new buzzword every day, is actually very good for South Africa. And when we risk losing that trade, it is devastating for us, because it doesn't just mean that we lose access to a market, it means that we kill local industry. And that is why AGOA is so important to uphold. And I think we also need to correct the myth that the Democratic Alliance has somehow been responsible for killing the AGOA. Well, our governments are actually deeply reliant on the African Growth and Opportunity Act. And we as a country, as a nation within our constitution, share values with countries like the United States of America. Maybe not with the current administration, that's up for debate. But deep down, if we look at the founding legislation of our countries, we are a liberal, democratic society. We are a constitutional democracy. And we should be aligning ourselves with other constitutional democracies around the world. And I'm going to differ a little bit with the professor, where he made a point where he said that values don't put food on the table. Well, I would beg to differ slightly. I think that a dogged and stubborn adherence to ideology doesn't put food on the table. A pragmatic approach and an alignment with liberal democratic values are what actually grants us access to a world that stimulates growth, that stimulates industry, that stimulates job creation and manufacturing, and that's good for us. And if we look at the other trade partners for South Africa, we can take China as the number one trade partner at the moment, but the relationship with the Chinese to South Africa is far more extractive than it is beneficial to local industry. Most of the trade with China, yes, it is the largest trading partner, but we actually trade in commodities with China. They take our natural resources, manufacture them, and then sell them back to us. This is the model that was used by the West, I would say, over 100 years ago, but the system has since changed. And we need to correct this narrative that the West is exploitative of South Africa, that South Africa doesn't benefit from trade agreements with the EU, with the US and the United Kingdom, and other Western countries that share our values, because that is really not the case. And we need to be very careful with the way that we paint South Africa out in this particular dynamic. But Chair, just moving away from these points, I want to speak specifically to economic diplomacy and really to DIRCO itself here, because our colleagues on the trade, on DTI, on that particular committee, have received a response from Minister Tau that said that since 2023, we have had no renewals of trade advisors to any of our economic diplomatic postings around the world. Now, I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. How are we the most unequal society in the world with a desperate need for investments and job creation, and we don't have anyone to facilitate trade and investments at our diplomatic missions anywhere at the moment? I mean, this is it's a rag. I would call it an oversight, but it's actually just plain negligence. In the face of stark inequality and poverty in South Africa, we've got nobody who's actually actively taking this up. And I'd like to call on the colleagues on DIRCO and Chair, through you, if we can make an appeal to actually get DIRCO to come and account for this. DIRCO needs to come and tell us why they have dragged their feet, why there is no trade being facilitated between key markets that we can use for both import and export. You know, it seems as if the priority within DIRCO has been focused elsewhere. We have been too busy driving a case at the ICJ while South Africans don't have access to water or food or jobs. I mean, where are the priorities within this particular department when it comes to trade? And on that point in particular, I think we need to look at why we are failing in terms of renegotiating a new deal. And what the professor said is that, yes, the global climate changes, we need to adapt. Completely agree with that. But we need to adapt quickly. You know, they say that a week is a long time in politics. Well, at the moment, a day is a long time in foreign affairs. You wake up every day and something has changed on the international stage, and we need to be able to adapt to that very quickly. South Africa has yet to send, to my knowledge, a formal delegation to renegotiate a bilateral deal with the United States of America. Now, if AGOA is not renewed, which is highly plausible, as I mentioned earlier, that's 76 billion rand worth of trade that's gone down the drain through preferential access to the US market. How are we actually going to negotiate a new deal if we don't even have trade advisors in diplomatic postings around the world? So we really need to get an answer from DIRCO, and maybe we can even have a joint committee between DIRCO and DTI to get to the crux of this problem, because it is really, really a scandal. It is absolute negligence on the part of the South African government, and certainly on the part of the GNU. And I'd just like to clarify as well that as much as the DA seems to be being blamed for these problems, we have no say in foreign policy in the government of national unity. We have no ministries, we have no deputy ministries, we have no chairpersons. We have made submissions to the president, and we've been told that it's only the purview of the president and the DIRCO minister to make these decisions. Well, I think the president needs to remember how he was elected into office in the first place when it comes to those decisions. And so, Chair, I would just really like to appeal on a trade perspective. We are not here to talk buzzwords. We are not here to sit and bicker politically among each other. We're here to serve the residents and the citizens of South Africa. We're here to give them jobs. We're here to bring investment. We are here to facilitate diplomacy that is in line with South Africa's constitutional values and principles. And we can't do that if we are sitting here pointing fingers and you know, really being, I think, petty about the matter in particular. So on that note, I'm going to conclude. Thank you very much, Chair. And through you, as I said, I would like us to please summon DIRCO and DTI officials to account for our severe lack of economic representation abroad, because that, to my mind, is the most pressing issue for South Africans. Trade and investment, stimulating economic growth and industry, creating jobs for South Africa. And then we won't have to worry about trying to plug a budget, for example, by increasing VAT. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Smith. We will now take Honorable Advocate Shamimo.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, and thank you, Chair. Quite a bit of what I wanted to say was actually covered by all of my colleagues. But firstly, I want to say thank you for the presentation to Prof. Zondi. and the highlighting of the pros and the concerns, but it is still quite inadequate. As I look through this document, I know that this matter can be broken down so much more, because these concerns is very, very deep that we do have. Chair, we are very alert that South Africa is navigating a G20 around a geopolitical environment, the worst we have ever seen in our lifetime. We're sitting with the situation with Russia, Ukraine, Palestine, Israel, right now, Pakistan and India. We've got DRC, we've got America, and quite a few more. We're going through into a G20, where all of the countries forming part of the G20 raises serious concerns on our ability to trust these particular countries. Then we are also alert further to the political games played and the lack of unity that is going to further jeopardize the success of this G20. Trade agreements will be critical, as will accountability and transparency and fairness and access to benefits of international events to all in South Africa. Because right now, as I'm listening to my colleagues and I've read through this presentation, the sad reality is that we are still gatekeeping international relations to a certain sector. Going through the docs, it is still silent on how is there going to be a benefit to the most marginalized. International relations policies, is it not inclusive? It excludes the marginalized and the poor. And as I've noted before, this document is silent on this fact. And it is not that we haven't brought up our concerns on every single meeting that we've had thus far, but we still remained silent with regard to this particular aspect. So what is the actual benefit percentage to the poor? We remain very unequal. We've had the oversight through in the Northwest, in Johannesburg, in Pretoria, with regard to public participation. We made it very clear that we're bringing public participation, we're bringing international relations to the grassroots so that our people can benefit and be educated, etc. So even with regard to the G20, what is happening? Is it being exposed into certain environments? When we've traveled, it's been silent. Looking at BRICS, it is very concerning that the economic impact has been this low, 2021. I think it's to 2023. So I would like to know, what is the current impact on the on BRICS with regards to the economic impact? What is where we currently standing? With the current geopolitical environment, we should be increasing and strengthening our relationships with countries that we can trust. Countries such as China, we've got Russia. We have countries that has really reached out to South Africa, and these are countries that we should be more focused upon. Then I want to look at parties such as DA, ACDP, Freedom Front Plus, PA, who has recently visited the unlawful state of Israel on a private visit. And this private visit with the narratives impacts on our country further by the attempts to create a false narrative of there being no apartheid, when qualified people who has spent a longer period of time has been in Palestine and has witnessed the apartheid. I've been there 3 times, and I'm shocked that we have people coming back today after a few days and only going with certain entities and saying there is no apartheid, when the apartheid is so blatant. It is an absolute disgrace. So the visits and relationships also to America by DA and AfriForum, they are creating their own little international relationship, and they are deliberately attempting to impact and jeopardize our outcome with regard to the G20, because we cannot have this little sideline trips that is currently happening. And now, despite the distaste of the DA that have been very clear about with regard to Russia, Now suddenly you want a relationship with Russia. It doesn't work like that. It's creating so much confusion. You don't know who to trust. So we have further had this visit by Zelensky. Putin, there is a warrant of arrest out. He wasn't allowed to come into South Africa. DA was the ones who made the most noise when President Putin was supposed to come and visit in our country. But we allow Zelensky. So I'm sorry, but you know what? Even in these type of situations, when you look at trade agreements, you look at international relations, etc., we've got to be very careful on how we navigate, because everything is going to impact on the ultimate outcome of success of the G20. We have to be more progressive with our international relationships. We are not progressive with our policies and with our laws and our regulations. Honorable Chair, in our own country, we're still stuck with archaic policies, archaic laws, and same when it comes to international relations. If I'm looking through this document and I look through the study recommendations, etc., it further raises concerns as, there's quite a bit detailed here, which is correct. But do we have the time to fix up these concerns to ensure that we are ready for this G20? So honestly, I note the current challenges, the concerns, and the oversight that we also had, that we've also raised serious concerns. But South Africa has another tendency. We have a tendency to spend lots of money. Millions will be spent with regard to this G20, and it just makes me wonder, how much profit will there be? Has this potential profit been calculated? And how many of this money will ultimately be pocketed instead of going for that which it is intended? Advertising, I'm not seeing great advertising that is actually reaching all levels for understanding and educating people with regard to the G20. And I personally feel that is long overdue. Then also with regard to our visit that we had, I am very concerned that when this portfolio went to just visit a few of the state houses and we went to visit the state lounge, if you do a comparison to what was provided in other G20s in the other countries and what South Africa has prepared, I don't think we're anywhere near ready for this G20 at this particular stage. So there's major concerns, and I don't know if we are going to be able to answer the concerns that has been raised, because we remain silent. And then also, I note there's a strengthened parliamentary oversight of international engagement's role in accountability and transparency. I want to place this on record, Honorable Chair. As a portfolio, we have been completely frustrated and limited in our oversight being on a virtual platform. And when we have been allowed on the very few occasions to do physical oversight on the same places that we initially did virtuals, it was shocking to witness that what you get on virtual versus the reality is very different. And I'm in agreement that the parliamentary oversight has to be increased, and it has to be physical oversights that is conducted. Thank you, Chair. Other than that, I do believe that I've been covered by my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. I see no new hands from members of the portfolio committee. I'll give over to you, Professor.
No, Chairperson, did you miss my hand?
Yeah,
this is Honorable Colleen Makubele, or did my hand go down? I had raised it.
There was no hand, it's only going up now. Proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, thank you so much. I'm also going to request that I switch off my video, mainly because I am on the road and I'm using the phone to talk. So, and I've written notes here. With your permission, I just wanted to greet yourself and greet our esteemed guests, Prof. Zondi, lovely to see you here. Thank you for the presentation, and also the colleagues from DPME and the honorable members that are here. So with your permission, I will then be off camera for now. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, you are permitted, Honorable Colin Makubela, to switch off your camera. Let's listen to your
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Chairperson, I will start with thanking really the NPC for the study that they have given us on South Africa's role in hosting and chairing the international events, and highlighting our country's efforts in global diplomacy, but also exposing some glaring inefficiencies like lack of strategic planning, weak institutional capacity that truly are undermining the potential benefits of these very important engagements. The NPC has acknowledged in their document and the presentation that they've given us that substantive outcomes are not certain on these events that we are hosting. And some of the factors that they talk about is the misalignment between political goals and economic gains, domestic constraints, etc. My first question to the NPC and the Department of DECO, including the DPME that I understand is here, that is supposed to also do monitoring and evaluation. First question is, why is South Africa continuing to punch above its weight without measuring returns for its citizens? What benefit are we deriving from punching above our weight when the cost-benefit analysis has not given us a clear indication that there is some tangible results that we're getting out of this? Two, why has the government failed to adopt lessons from countries like China, Rwanda, and UAE, which you talk about in your document? What concerned me was that the study concludes, and I can be wrong, you'll correct me, by telling us that although South Africa has made progress in planning of this international hosting and sharing of these great events, we are not aligning to our national interests and our economic objectives. They vary. The country must enhance its capabilities to better align global ambitions with national interests in order to receive material benefits. My understanding is that this study, number one, it has cost money. Number two, it was in response to a critical question of research which you are trying to answer. The question of producing tangible results for South Africans. The question of cost-benefit analysis. Now, your recommendations and your findings are not telling us what exactly is this balance that we should be aiming for. What concerns me and is your findings that are more on telling us we must update our national framework. South Africa must strengthen parliamentary oversight on international engagements. South Africa must update our foreign policies, etc. But nothing that tells us precisely what South Africa ought to do to derive value that will contribute to greater society, benefit the poorest of the poor, benefit the marginalized and the most vulnerable in our society. You are not telling us what possibly we could be deriving as monetary value in how we can position South Africa in deriving economic growth, tangible economic growth from these events. You are not even telling us, even from the past, whether we have benefited in terms of tourism or not, and where can we improve culture benefits or exposure
exposure to whether it's cultural exposure, artistic exposure, business exposure. How are those benefits derived? When, how much did we derive in the past? What could be improved? The study seems to be very academic and theoretical. Perhaps we didn't receive the full document. If there is those, I would love to see them. But at this stage, we are not able to really ascertain, did this study answer the critical question that it was commissioned for? How much was this study? Did we benefit from it? What is the value that we get as the global image that seems to be what South Africa is going after? Some global image, strategic positioning as a leader in the international stage. Do we get any demographic dividends as well? In terms of our youth and unemployment, women, is there any dividend that we can tangibly say, yes, there is some value-adding inputs that our youth make at planning and hosting, or that our women or our men or business people make, or any sector at all, that you can give us those statistics? Now, the study also, for me, it has failed to answer what is this better balance in terms of cost benefit that South Africa should be aiming for. It has just left me with more questions than answers. And we rely on your expertise, Prof. Zondo, and your team, and those that are focused on drilling down on this. In fact, Chairperson, my view is that this should even be a topic of debate in Parliament because of its critical nature and strategic nature of the kind of values, the amount of monies that are being spent to host these events, and the kind of benefits that we have seen or have not yet seen. And I'll make an example as well of the FIFA 2010, which one of my colleagues alluded to. When we look at FIFA 2010, Chairperson, yes, there were seasonal benefits. We've got some stadia, etc. But in the long run, most of those stadias, especially in far and remote areas, have become white elephants. Cost benefit to the nation, you can't really quantify it. Occasionally, you would have an event there or a match there, but most of the time they lie gathering dust. People went out 2010 with excitement, made serious investments on B&Bs, etc. Most of them now are closed. And the study is not telling us how do we sustain some of this excitement and investments so that we continue to derive return on these investments that not only the nation makes, but members of our communities make, with the hope of some kind of a return and sustainable businesses. Now, there are some few questions that I'm going to raise that I hope will get some answers today. And as MK Party, you will know, Chair, that it's our duty to really highlight and demand accountability for some of the shortcomings that we are seeing here. Number one, how are we going to address the misalignment between the political goals and the economic gains that has been a recurring issue with how we host this? We seem to be more concerned about the political gains, but the economic gains are lacking. And what are the timelines, given that we've got G20 coming up? What are the timelines that the NPC has recommended that we close these gaps, including establishing some foreign policy forum, that will address some of these gaps and ensure that South Africa sees benefit? What are the timelines that we're looking at so that we can monitor that and be able to provide oversight on those timelines and exactly what actions are going to be taken? Despite South Africa having hosted BRICS summit, we have seen that the investment ties that we have declined, even with BRICS. And the study is not telling us also how are we going to reverse this trend. Even in some of the AU events that we hold here, and where whether sporting events, etc., we've seen how China and them have benefited. How do we reverse the trend of not being able to leverage and build upon these events for economic impact? And when I listen to the presentation as well, I hear that you talk about strategies that China, Rwanda, and UAE have adopted, but I'm failing to hear how you have benchmarked against these best practices for South Africa in terms of our foreign policy and the benefits that these countries have derived. Where are we missing the mark as South Africa? Is it in our policy posture? Is it in our planning? And how do we close this? And how can we adopt similar strategies? Because when you do such a detailed research, we really want actionable outcomes out of it, or recommendations that we can take back and hold the department to account, especially with what has been spent thus far on preparing this exercise. My next question is, the focus, Chairperson, and my colleague from MK has alluded to this. The focus seems to be more on showcasing South Africa's leadership in the international stage. We are not influencing really key decisions, and we are not using this platform to address our pressing domestic challenges, such as unemployment, inequality, and our economic stagnation. And this research is not also giving us some idea of how our domestic challenges, and broadly, not just for a select few, domestic challenges that we face in Limpopo, in Eastern Cape, in Northern Cape, are going to be addressed by some of these foreign agendas that we are undertaking, and the events that we seem to believe they are important for South Africa, or the GNU seems to believe they're important and they must be undertaken with the costs attached to them. What is it that is going to change when we close the doors in November after the last visitor has left? What can we count, as South Africans, that we have gained and we are going to sustain out of this to address our domestic challenges? Because ultimately, we need to boost our domestic standing, and we need to see a thriving economy domestically. Chair, I'm going to talk about G20 for a while. The objectives of G20, and I need this committee to, well, the NPC, the commission, to assist us as well on this. What we understand are the objectives of G20, and it has been outlined that SA intends to address prevailing global challenges. And the three high-level priorities that have been outlined are as follows. One is inclusive economic growth, industrialization, employment, and reduced inequality. That's priority one, all under economic growth, industrialization, employment, and reduced inequality. Now, Priority 2 is food security. Priority 3 is artificial intelligence and innovation for sustainable development. What is the view of the NPC on these priorities for South Africa in hosting the G20? Can you tell us what these, in your research and understanding, if you have gone into that detail, are going to assist us in addressing the domestic challenges that our people are facing every day of unemployment, of inequality, of poverty, youth unemployment, youth that do not have this digital skills that will enable them to participate in the future digital economy or the current digital economy that is emerging. How are we going to have these priorities align and link to what is happening in Limpopo, in Northern Cape, in Mpumalanga, and address the challenges that our people are facing on a daily basis? In your view, as the NPC, as you were doing this study, did our international ratings change as a country? Looking at how we hosted the BRICS, the FIFA, and many others, did we see any goodwill change, such as perhaps crime statistics change post that, or our tourism has improved, or are there any benefits at all in your historic study of how we have performed in such international events that we have hosted? Now, on a different category of questions, are we moving fast enough as a country in responding to the challenges that you have alluded in your presentation, such as global volatility with wars, trade wars, domestic uncertainty, political uncertainty, our political uncertainty, which is glaringly obvious now, where we are sitting as a nation without a budget, the political instability of the GNU, and this the fights that are happening within that GNU marriage, and the impact that this has on South Africa's standing and its ability to host credibility and clear conscience that indeed we are a nation that is esteemed enough to host such international events, when domestically we are failing to pass a budget, we are failing to provide political stability. The government of the day, the GNU, is failing to address unemployment, inequality. The parties that are in government are fighting daily on domestic policies that are supposed to be the foundation that builds this nation to be an equal nation, address the inequalities of the past, address the atrocities that we faced in the past. Do these elements, in your view, such as the court ruling yesterday that says you can have dual citizenship, clearly signaling that there are those that they don't have confidence in the country to invest and stay in the country and build it. They want to have one leg in, one leg out. Does that add to this global image that we think we are building, and we are hosting all these costly, luxurious, glamorous events to sustain? Are we not just really confused and shooting ourselves in the foot, talking with two forked tongues, when the government of the day, the GNU, runs to our international partners or alliances, whether it's former or current, who knows, and tarnish the image and the brand of the country, lie about the policies of the country, and then you want to come and host G20. Should we not cancel these events, in your honest view, and rather invest this money to sort out our domestic issues, so that when we are ready and we have a government like MKP that can come and govern and lead the people of South Africa out of poverty, inequality, create jobs, strengthen institutions, etc., then we are ready to host events like G20. Because right now, we have the GNU that is running a circus around South Africans, no budget. They want to cancel the employment equity, the BEE, which is the foundation of what makes South Africa a nation that it is, the rainbow nation that came out of a very dark history, working its way up to an equality, to employment, and to fight poverty. But then you've got the same people in government countering those progressive efforts. And now we want to bring international guests and showcase what? What, in your view, as NPC, is the impact of what political parties like the DA, what are they doing in tarnishing the image, in bringing us to a point where they paralyze the progressive policies from benefiting not just the minority white, but the majority of the Black, Indians, colors, and all the nations that live and work in this land, who are Africans and who are committed to this nation and are investing daily in this nation and have no options to jump the border and go to Trump's haven. You know, we are here to stay. And institutions like yourselves, you should be assisting us in your recommendation and reports to address these issues very sharply and giving us recommendations that will allow us to to act decisively and make decisions that will benefit the greater South Africans, so that all South African citizens respect domestic laws, they respect the policies of government, whether they think they like them or not. The same way they respected the apartheid policies which serve them, they must respect these progressive policies that we have now and which are serving the majority of South Africans. And once those are strengthened and BEE is strengthened, land issues are strengthened, people have land, we are able to redistribute land, give opportunities to all our people, access to finance, then in MK's opinion, we are ready to host the G20 and all South Africans can now partake in what G20 intends to bring, because now as it stands, it's only going to benefit a select few. And I hope that your response and your research will enable us to sharpen these strategic positions and postures that we need to take and as a country. Thank you so much, Chairperson. Thank you again, Prof. Zondi and your team and the department. Thank you.
Honorable Colin Makubela. Thank you very much. There might be new people on the platform who may are interacting with us for the first time. I'm just saying to them that they shouldn't be surprised when we speak in this committee, there are no interjections, either from the chair or another member. It's a very rare occasion. So we allow members to express themselves and give them time to say whatever that they want to say. So I want to thank you once more, Prof. Zondi, and your collective for the presentation. Just before I give you an opportunity, I think as a committee, we note the part of the report does indicate that there are tangibles and intangibles that we need to take note of in as far as the global space is concerned and what you do as a collective. So we note that important thing. The other thing which I think we should take note of as the portfolio committee is your mandate. And your mandate is a very simple one, that you advise. So, and I think we must underline the word advise. You advise government and all of society on implementation of the National Development Plan. So you might have some wishes in as far as implementation of certain things are concerned. Ultimately, that decision is taken by government. So I just thought as a portfolio committee, we must take note of that which informs your work, so that as a portfolio committee, we don't live under an impression that there are certain things that you can do as the commission. You advise government. The ultimate decisions are taken by the government. So your advices can be taken. Sometimes your advices might not be taken, no matter the extent to which empirical evidence will have been done on your advices. The third point is obviously, as a collective, you are constrained by the inherent constraint we have in the economy, which has an impact on allocation of resources for you to fully execute your mandate, because you don't have limitless resources at your disposal. There may be over 1,000 things that you may want to do, but with some of those inherent limitations, you can only, out of 1,000, maybe do 120. So I'm just saying, as a committee, we understand that constraint, Professor Zondi. So we will not live under an illusion that you are able to achieve everything else that you have on the table. So we understand that. I'm going to suggest to you that you must also, because you advise government. Now, government in South Africa, we use the word state and government interchangeably. So I will suppose that government will include parliament. That you, as the commission, come closer to the sector oversight model. Now, sector oversight model is a model that is adopted by national parliament, working together with all the provincial legislatures. There's a certain model which is adopted, and that's the framework within which all committees and members of parliament have to do their work. So you may want to come closer to it. I'm saying this because you did allude to a very important fact of us having to strengthen our oversight in as far as this matter that we are dealing with is concerned. So I agree with you, but I'm also saying you may want to come closer to that model because it's an evolving model, and it has got its own inherent challenges in as far as us doing oversight is concerned. And I hope one day the model can be improved, because it has to be improved because it's constraining members and committees to do effective oversight. On the misalignment between the political and the economic, on your findings, maybe we will have the full report, but I don't think it will be a variable that is absolute. So I wouldn't want us. I've not seen the report, but I don't think, from one city, I don't think it can be an absolute reality that it's. So maybe you wanted to say that indeed there are inherent weaknesses which relate to misalignments between the political and the economic, and therefore you're asking government to pay attention to it, so that we don't leave the meeting here as a community with an impression that in absolute terms there's total collapse as a consequence of misalignment between the political and the economic. And we may start communicating it like that to the public, that we sat with the commission and there's total collapse and so on. I think it's a variable that we need to understand that it will continue to be a challenge in as far as the implementation of objectives by government is concerned. So my understanding is that you are simply drawing to the attention of government that there are those instances, and some of them may be in terms of levels more critical, some of them may not be so critical, but government must give attention to them. That's my understanding, but you'll come back to that matter, Professor Zondi. Yes, indeed, the World Bank has issued a report, and I would like members to look at that report in totality, because it's not only talking about, and when it talks about the risk, that report of the World Bank, it doesn't put it as an absolute truth. What the World Bank is doing in that report is warning South Africa, but it's warning South Africa in a context. But now I want to quote the World Bank report. It says, growth in sub-Saharan Africa as well as South Africa is expected to rise in 2025 and further accelerate in 2027. So that's where the World Bank starts. But it goes further and says, but there is a risk. And that risk includes restrictive trade policies. So I'm just saying also that as a committee, honorable members, we don't live here with an impression that says absolutely the World Bank has condemned South Africa in as far as restrictive trade policies are concerned, as if it's an absolute decision empirically done by the World Bank, when actually the World Bank is saying, South Africa, you are growing with Sub-Sahara, but make sure that there's a lingering risk that you have to attend to in as far as your trade policies are concerned. There seem to be instances of them being restrictive. I just thought that you must also not live with the impression that as the committee we are saying so, but rather put the World Bank report as it is, instead of giving our own interpretation to the report of the World Bank. And also, I wouldn't want us to allow you to leave Professor Zondi and your team with an impression that says here in the committee we are averse and non-averse to certain theoretical concepts, because there are members who may use concepts like neocolonialism, others have used liberalism, and those who use the other theoretical
We lost you, Mr. Chair. Your signal, we can't hear you.
Am I not audible? You have lost me.
Now you're audible, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. Now, I was just saying, honorable members, that Professor Zondi and his team should not leave this meeting with an impression that in the committee we would want to allow certain theoretical concepts like neoliberalism, neocolonialism, and we will not want to allow other theoretical concepts. Please leave the meeting with an understanding that those concepts will continue to be used because we move from a particular historical context as South Africa, and ideologically also we move from certain backgrounds in as far as ideologies are concerned, and scholarly also there have been reflections on this concept, and therefore it will depend as and when what the environment says, when members will use them. So those are tools that we will continue to use to analyze society and make reflections, whether it's neoliberalism, liberalism, neo-fascism, colonialism, neo-colonialism. So you will continue to have that emerging from the portfolio committee. The last thing, Prof, and I wish, because you're advising government, you can advise government on it. You know, there's a big problem in the African continent. When you look at the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement, that's a very important tool we need to use to advance our cause, not only as South Africa, but as the African continent. Please advise government, because I'll make an example of clause 67K of the AU Agenda 2063. It talks about the African Union having to introduce an African passport through e-technology. And the intention was to have done that by 2018. And there's no indication on why we have not been able to achieve such an important thing. Now, the reason why we are quibbling among ourselves within the African continent, we sometimes forget that there was a decision by gentlemen in Berlin who decided to pigeonhole us and created these enclaves within the continent. Today there's a huge brouhaha among ourselves. Those gentlemen were long no more. So they left us with that legacy, and we are fighting, we are killing each other, we are spending billions and billions of resources trying to restrict movements among ourselves. And so the AU, as this initiative of Agenda 23, somehow wants to address those things that came from Berlin. So please advise government to, as South Africa, as we engage with the AU collective, to attend to this thing and be able to explain why the passports, as intended by 2018 in line with clause 67K, Agenda 2063, we have not been able to achieve that. Okay, just lastly, GCIS, in as far as the G20 is concerned, I think they must step up their game in as far as on an ongoing basis, briefing our people about the ongoings of the hosting of the G20. They can do that on a weekly basis or whatever, is up to them. But South Africa has to know that on a particular day or so, there are briefings by the government, but it's also done through working with African states, particularly through the AU, because we are not regarding ourselves only as the host. And brief Africans and South Africans and the world about the progress we are making and the extent to which we are happy that indeed November will be successful, because November is on already now. The date is a culmination. So my view is that GCIS, please advise them. They must up their game in as far as intensifying communication is concerned. As they say in entrepreneurship, making business without advertising is like winking at someone in the dark. So we may be doing very good things about the G20, but people may not be aware of them. Over to you, Professor Zondi and your team. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you very much to the honourable members of the committee. I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of our colleagues in the Planning Commission in saying that we have heard quite a lot, and we were really actually welcoming very critical comments in this. Because we are in the business of thinking creatively and finding solutions. That's our job. We are in the business of thinking about what could be done better, in which way. We do not always have all the wisdom to share, but wisdom comes from conversations and feedback. It's impossible to go through all the wisdom we've got here about things that are very, very, very useful. in taking this work forward. Safe for me to say that, as we indicated at the beginning, this was more like a scoping study with a very small sample just to get the ball rolling. There is a need for a more in-depth, a more detailed study that could come up with very detailed and specific recommendations. But our attitude was that you don't go into details, recommendations, and specifics that would be 100 before you have first signaled about the big issues, the big picture, about the major, more strategic things that need to be done. So I apologize that the report might not have sufficient of that drill down detail and more operational detail, because it seemed very important to us that we must first set things right in relation to the importance of economic diplomacy, the importance of a big picture, the importance of making sure that there's a balance between cost and benefits, the importance of making sure that we are able to harness sound and very warm political relationship for economic, technical, educational, cultural, tourist cooperation. It was important for us to signal the importance of that, almost to remind the country to go back to what the NDP said in 2012. So I apologize that it may be found to be too high level and all that, because it is aimed at decision makers at the highest level, aimed at getting them to think carefully about what is our calculus, what are we trying to achieve over a long scale of time. So it might then miss a lot of operational and specific and all of that. The third point to make is that, yes, indeed, as honorable members have indicated, there is a lot of questions to ask. The report itself doesn't answer a lot of questions, but it shows one of the things in research you find is about not finding something. A finding may be to find something specific and package it and take it and run it. Sometimes a finding is not finding something. Now, when you're not finding data about what happened to the pledge of incoming trade to the value of 80 billion into South Africa and the region, and not finding data about what actually happened after 2018, after that pledge, is itself a finding. And that finding is in relation to how well do we collect data? How well do we take science in government to make sure that when a committee like this is coming and it says, no, we had a huge investment made with that SADC summit in 2018. And at a time, there was a little bit of euphoria about it. What has been made out of it? We are able to say in 2019, this is how much of that trade was actually finally absorbed, in which industry, in which way. In 2020, how much of that? In 2021, how much of that? That's a job of a developmental state, to be able to collect data and measure its successes and sustain them and be very detailed about them. Private institutions can collect that data, and we need that. Banks can collect that data, have research department in that. But it seems to us that the state has a principal duty just to protect itself too, to collect as much data as possible, so that we are able to say, last year, even on basic things, last year we had 30 visits for bilateral relationships. We're able to generate and instigate so many agreements between these companies and that companies. We're able to attract investment to our spaza shops in this area, in that area, in very specific terms. They don't talk in generic terms and stuff like that. So we have a problem of data. It's a data problem. And that problem of data is actually a monitoring and evaluation problem because we receive data in society generally from the processes of monitoring and evaluation. Now, the NDP requires that South Africa must build a capable developmental state. Capability there included the capability to generate science for its actions. They develop to generate data for its action. It was already known in 2012 that government has many institutes and research centers and research units within government. Many departments have their own research unit, many departments actually have their international relations unit. To what extent are they required to submit data on a monthly basis that can then be collated at some point so that we do not talk in generic terms, we start to talk in specific terms? A study of this nature may not be able to generate data itself. It needs to analyze existing data. So this whole state of South Africa needs to take data a little bit more seriously. We need to make sure we push from all of us and say collecting evidence is important. It's as important as the actions themselves. Because if I'm not able to show that I am spending every rand and cent properly because it produces this, then whatever I say may sound like it's just political talk. It may sound like just it's make-believe because I'm not backing it up with empirical data. So that's one of the findings of the study, that we're not collecting empirical data in this area generally that well. We are all to blame for it. I come from the think tanking environment in this area. That's where I am right now. We need to do better in that area to ensure that we keep asking questions to government about data. Where is data? So that they can start to realize, no, we need to collect data now a little bit better and stuff like that. But you, honorable members, also have that duty. If you've been interacting with government over the past 10 years and data has not improved, it's not just government that might be blamed. We also must be blamed. What have we been doing to signal that we no longer want generic talk now? Show us the data, show us the figures, so that then you can incentivize the practice of a scientific management of government as per the NDP. So it's a collective duty of the whole of society to signal the need to generate data and generate it all the time. And we as the Planning Commission also need to make sure that we keep advising government on how, first on the need to collect data and generate data and be data-backed and all of that, and not just be narrative-backed. And then also on how that can be done. As the Honorable Chair said, advice can be taken, but advice can be ignored. It's just the nature of the work. There is also the stuff about, there is no data presented also in this report. If you look at Honorable Makwele, you look at around page 60 to about page 72. There's quite an interesting data that is presented there, quite basics and all of that is useful. So there is data that is here on some important issue. For example, the data that shows that in spite of all the effort and all the activities and all the investment, the return in terms of investment back to us and trade volumes, say, for example, from BRICS, is still very, very low. Not because there's a lack of will. It probably means there is a lack of mechanisms to actually fully harness what is potentially there. Now, I'm just going to put this, is not in a report, and I'm saying, now, if we are going to be having a meeting of the ministers of communications and digital technologies, for example, at BRICS, you ask yourself, how many technology companies in South Africa are notified to also have a side meeting alongside these ministers so that they can explore their basic or their own practical trade and investment thing? Because if you don't do that, you will talk about trade. But trade won't happen because trade is not done by us analysts, it's not done by government officials, but it's done by companies, including state-owned companies. So what are we actually practically doing to make sure that a very good, sound, positive, politically strong relationship translate to very good goods themselves and services? That will require strategic management and all of those things. That is what the NDP said we should do in 2022. That is why it's important to keep saying we are reminding everybody, society, government, and everybody, let's go back to what Parliament adopted in 2012, the current National Development Plan. It has specifics about what we should do. If we add anything right now, Honorable Chair, we might be confusing the system. Our attitude is, if a recommendation has not been acted upon, don't introduce a new resolution, because it gives us all excuse to move on to a new thing without implementing the old thing. So if we keep adding new recommendations, then the board shifts and shifts all the place. Say, go back, let us honestly, in detail, implement the NDP. Chapter 7 of the NDP, which is on this area, is got very specific things we need to do. If more detail is needed, then government, department, and all that can convene a meeting and say, but this, how do we actually implement it? Then we can say, okay, let us look at how does Singapore do it, how does Vietnam do it, how does Mexico do it, and then say we package it. But we do need to make sure that government implements a national plan. It's one of the duties we all have. Those of us who are analysts, we should be analyzing that so that we don't just look at activity, but look at whether it is implementing the plan that is it. Otherwise, why have a plan if you're not going to work away from it, near it, but not on it? And I guess the members of parliament, honorable members of parliament, also have to assist us to make sure that we bring back the focus to what we committed to do, while we still have another 4 years to the end of that plan. We can't give up on a plan while we are in the middle of it. I agree very strongly, various members of parliament spoke to this, on the need to have a feedback mechanism of some form. Perhaps things fall by the cracks because we are not on a regular basis getting a feedback detailed with statistics sharing things, but even many other undertakings that we are making. What is the cost? Oh yeah, it cost us 5 million, but then what are the benefits? In the immediate, in the long term, it cost us 3 million. So you are under servicing. How to improve? And I guess it's a constructive form of oversight. It's also a constructive form of vigilance for those of us who are outside government. We are all going to improve in this one. And a lot of members spoke to this misalignment between the political and the economic. Some of the practical ways it is shown in the report happens is that the political objective for a thing is clear and is well expressed, even in statement. But the economic objective is almost not thought of or not expressed. Maybe it's thought of as obvious. But it is better when you communicate with society to say, politically, this is how it's significant for us to be taking up this new role at the UN. But it is how it also advances our national interest at the same time. It's not either or, but it is both. But perhaps it's a culture we must develop. We are generally a country that has a very strong political diplomacy, but we're learning to upscale economic diplomacy. Maybe it's not in a natural language that it is, but it's something that we must be deliberate about, because as I was looking at the specific recommendations that are going to rehash them to the honorable members, I was picking up 5 very specific now recommendations that are also in the report. We picked up the big ones, but the specific one is that the countries that are successful, they focus on economic diplomacy, and they do that deliberately. Countries like China, they center the SOEs. Those are the ones that actually do the pickup of economic diplomacy, because states, governments cannot pick trade. They don't trade. They facilitate trade. SOEs, in the case of China, major private companies, in the case of India, in the case of Indonesia. Maybe in our case, both. I don't know, but that's how they do. In everything, they caucus with these big companies, they caucus with the organized business, and they walk along. They go in agreement. Maybe the advantage I have is that they've already achieved what we call social compact already on an ordinary basis. There's already a general national consensus about the management of the economy. And then that extends to how then they do economic diplomacy. The South Africa is required under NDP to also have a social compact, so that we don't go ad hoc. There's a general agreement. We can work together, business and government and labor and civil society in everywhere. The second thing they do is that they deploy the trade diplomats and economic diplomats. We've already said in South Africa, we need to make sure that we bring back the trade diplomats. The one ambassador indicated there how it helped them when they had a trade diplomat, because while they talk all of that, trade diplomats are trained to pick up. There's a company, it must be in the Northern Cape, or the company is in Limpopo. We're going to link these people together with these, and then we're going to sit them down, chair their first meeting, and then let them to conclude the deal. And then we'll come back to them how to help. We need the Home Affairs to help you with this. They facilitate all of that so that in the end, trade actually finally happens. So they deploy that. In our case, as it was confirmed as well by the minister, we have actually abandoned all trade diplomats. We no longer have them. So we don't have those people who must run around to actually seal the deals, the actual business deal, assist business, contact them, visit all the business districts, go everywhere, small business, bigger, go out to them and mobilize them all the time. We need to, one of the things that the countries that do that are evidence-based. I've already indicated that. The fourth one is that countries that do this well, they leverage strategic partnerships. If we improve our relationship with Angola to the point where it is warm, the next thing is not to warm it further because it's already warm. The next thing is to say, now that we're really very good, we're doing very well, we're great friends, how do we then link up all our companies, all the telecom companies, link up with the South African companies, the energy companies, link up and all that. Let us together push them into deals, facilitate and do that. We don't always do that very well. We do focus on warming the relationship, sometimes even when the relationship is already very warm. But harnessing means that you bring businesses along because they are the ones who do the business. That includes the SOEs. The countries that do well are the ones that also do follow through, which is to this day, the Chinese only hosted the Beijing Olympics in 1994, 1995. But to this day, they still have the mechanism for tracking how much benefits accrued from that. So that is 30 years later. They still have the mechanism. So they create mechanisms, they create an agency, they create a task team, or that they let them stay for a long time. And then that for them works for them. Maybe that's what we do. In our case, sometimes we don't even create a mechanism at all. Somehow we think after an event, things will happen. Maybe it's lack of resources to create those mechanisms, but sometimes the mechanism is asking the Development Bank of Southern Africa, be a custodian of this 80 billion investment pledge to Southern Africa. Track it, talk to your counterpart in the region, talk to your fellow development bank about how you're going to absorb this 80 billion. Report, let us know how we support you. Because they exist as a state agency to do those kinds of things. They have the expertise to do that. Perhaps it might not be done by a desk at DECO. It's not their expertise to do that. But they must be able to approach the BSA, say, please, can you handle this for us? Just as you do in the country internally, when you want to handle a housing issue, a very practical one, though we have a Department of Housing, you still ask an institution called the Independent Development Trust, which is an agent of government, to do project management for you. We need to do the same thing also in international relations, it seems to me. And the last thing is that they all review and replan. So after a AU summit, there is a gathering of parliamentarians, of government, of think tanks, of research institutes, of businesses, and say, how did we go with the last summit 2 months ago? What are the takeaways? Next day, we look at what we're able to do, and they continuously do that, so that things don't fall by the wayside, don't get displaced by new priorities and new energies and new focuses and other. The long and short of it then is that we need to be deliberate about connecting the economic and the political. We need to be deliberate about balancing the cost and the benefit. Without that, any number of technical things you can do will not work. If we are deliberate, we will not let even a single trade diplomat in a major trade market not be replaced. Then we are deliberate. We don't even need to be watched for it. We don't need to be reminded for it. Because we are deliberate. Japan is very important for us for technology and technology transfer and technological trade. So you cannot have an embassy in Japan and not have an attaché on technology. Fortunately, that area has stayed constant. They have not withdrawn their attaché, but it's in trade and trade and industry where we have not replaced a number of them. I will not belabor many other points. Many other points we really well received, and we really take to heart many of the suggestions that have been made. Definitely, honorable members, the domestic impact the international. Whatever we do domestically, whatever challenges we face on the domestic work, does have a bearing on how we are seen in other parts of the world or how we relate with other parts of the world. But more importantly, the capacities we build at home enable us to absorb whatever we attract in the world. It's very simple that if I go to a World Expo in UAE and I'm able to get commitments to the value of 200 million, that 200 million US dollars won't come to South Africa unless there's absorptive capacity. And absorption is not done by government. It is done by companies, by SOEs, and all of those kinds of things. So that I have clinched a 200 million deal is not an achievement, a final achievement in a real way. It is simply a potential achievement. Until I have secured, Standard Bank are able to pick this one up. Oh, this SOE is able to absorb this. And that's one of the main things that we need to do. Lastly, I think there is quite a lot of also issues that came up from the honorable members that are a reason why we need a more comprehensive research. Perhaps government itself perhaps must commission a huge study looking at what has been the benefits in the past and what have been the costs first and what have been the benefits of all the first major events we have hosted and those that we have chaired. And then identify where we've succeeded very well, like the honorable members talk about 2010. Why did we succeed there? Is it not because in the 2010 one, the whole work was actually outsourced to a special company, a special purpose company to manage that. And that company was very clear on what must be achieved by when and was very project management style in its way it does. Do we have to do the same thing all the time? Maybe there are lessons to be done, but we need a comprehensive study to say what are the things that we need to do, because this is only a scoping study and it may have glazed over all over the top. Definitely South Africa engagement with the African Union and Africa to align all of these things is absolutely important. I'm not going to go further than this and simply just say thank you so much, honorable members, for all that you have raised. We use it to go think and use it to refine our thinking and maybe generate more advisories. And we are hoping that we can also then have a more detailed engagement with the actors in this area, DECO, DTIC, National Treasury, and others, just to hear what they think we could do to implement some of the insights that come from this report. But we really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your audience. I don't know whether there's any member of the Planning Commission that wants to make further input, and I'm sure there would be some things they would like to emphasize with your permission, Honorable Chair.
Thanks, Professor Zondi. Yes, they can proceed.
Yes.
Chair,
Yes.
Chair, I think Professor Zondi has captured it very well for all of us, I think, both committee members and the National Planning Commission. As he indicated, there's a lot of work still to be done, but we can already, the challenge is already there. G20 is here, so a number of things need to happen. As they say, fixing the plane while it's in flight is a challenge, but that's what we have to do now. But thank you again for the audience, and really appreciated the really honest feedback that we got from all the members of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is Commissioner Mulukwana here?
I'm here, Commissioner.
Commissioner Mulukwana is our energy expert, international energy as well is a big issue for her. Yes, you have some input, Commissioner?
Thank you, Commissioner Zondi. All protocols observed, and what I would like to say myself as the chair of the work stream was that we do appreciate that our work is being considered by the Portfolio Committee. We would like to have more of these engagements because most of the time we do work and it's not taken into, and it doesn't reach those that needs to implement or even reach their advice at most of the points. So we do appreciate this kind of engagements, and I hope this is not the last that we are meeting. And to those members that have got that can talk to other colleagues, we would like to have such engagements even in other spaces and other areas of our work as the National Planning Commission. We suffer from doing work that never reaches portfolio committees or even the actors, which are the implementers that should be considering our advices. So moments like these are appreciated from the National Planning Commission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I thought we were going to also mention to the honorable members that there is another study coming up that is looking at the international agreements and their implications for us. Yes, Commissioner Puli.
Chair, I think that work we will also share gladly with the Portfolio Committee when that work is completed, so that the Portfolio Committee can also engage with that work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, because it's about the agreements, the treaties, the commitments we make internationally, and our ability to translate these into concrete benefit for the country, and also to understand whether there are any that are clashing with our national interest or clashing with our constitutional obligations, and whether we have the wherewithal to report on them, because with each agreement there are then reporting obligations, and that's a lot of duty and a lot of work, and whether we are systematic in signing into all these international agreements and all of that. And it arises out of the treaty establishing the International Criminal Court and the obligation it places on the country to abide by every element of that without any proviso, in contrast to the UK, which signed the same thing, domesticated the ICC treaty, but reserve for itself the right to decide to be reserved to Parliament, that Parliament must decide on certain areas and how they implement it. We need to check whether in our case we simply do blanket acceptance of all manner of agreements, be it on trade, be it on trade in animal products, and all of those kinds of things, and how we manage them, and how these could assist us to build a prosperous country. But thank you very much. I don't see any other commissioner who wants to make any input. Then I'll hand over back to the Honorable Chairperson with great gratitude. Thank you and honor. Thanks.
Professor Zondi and your collective, let me, on behalf of the Portfolio Committee on International Relations, take this opportunity to thank you for this interaction. It's quite an important interaction. I think we learn from one another, and we will continue to interact among ourselves in as far as these matters are concerned. From what other members have said, indeed, members, we will do our best to make sure that at least on a quarterly basis we convene interministerial accountability, which means as the chair, I will have to speak to other chairpersons of relevant committees that will be affected in as far as this matter is concerned, particularly around issues of trade, tourism, and so on, so that together we can, together with the ministers and their deputies, on a quarterly basis, take South Africans into our confidence in as far as our mandates are concerned, trade agreements, what's accruing to South Africa, and how these FDIs should or are impacting on the lives of our people, particularly to deal with poverty, inequality, and unemployment. So we will do that, and we hope that this oversight model that I spoke about, which is a sector, parliamentary sector oversight model, will not be an inhibiting factor. So we will do some work in relation to bringing it to the understanding of the authorities of Parliament, the importance of introducing that new approach of quarterly sessions where South Africans will get briefings on what we are doing as a committee and holding the executive accountable in that regard. So we will work on that so that it can then be done. We will also engage programming committee, because the committee that decides on programs of government in as far as the legislative arm of the state is concerned, it is the programming committee. We are thankful, Prof, and we hope that this is not the last interaction. I wish you, honorable members, a successful sitting this afternoon, interactions that will be taking place between today and tomorrow until the 21st, when we will be doing a reconsideration of the fiscal framework so that we can move this country of ours forward. We congratulate the under-20 team of South Africa Soccer. They did very well yesterday, and if I'm not wrong, they are now proceeding to the semi-finals. Thank you very much, honorable members, and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you,
Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Chair. Thank you, colleagues. Bye, guys.
I can say Chairperson, you can say Zondi and the